The movie and show footage used in the video is owned entirely by the copyright holder. Repod Reptiles in a Lone Colony makes no claim of ownership and uses the footage for the purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Please support the official releases of Jurassic Park, The Lost World Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. Before we begin, let me state the obvious. Yeah, I know. It's not Ultimate Dinosaur. Trust me when I say making 100+ skins ain't easy, Chief. And don't get me started on Godzilla Monster Apocalypse. Oh, God. Trust me, they're coming. Not sure about that second one, though. Hello, everybody. Today we're doing something a little different, just in time for a certain movie's release. Jurassic Park is one of the largest film franchises in the world. You have to be living under a rock in order to completely not know about this film franchise's existence. And speaking of which, now that's better. Gonna shut up. It's one of those milestone films that comes once in a lifetime. The first film itself revolutionized the world of visual effects and introduced a whole new generation of future paleontologists to the field. It revolutionized films for many, not years, but decades to come. And because it was so successful, it spawned a lot of cross-promotions with other companies, studios, game developers, book publishers. Going past the toys, I'm more so talking about other pieces of media, mainly through comics, video games, novels, children's books, short films, cancelled animated series, and other supplementary materials. With a lot of these pieces of media stating themselves to be canon in the greater Jurassic Park canon. And this would be true with other large franchises such as Alien, Predator, Terminator, RoboCop, and of course. But soon what was considered to be canon would be thrown out the window, mainly because as the Jurassic franchise continued, the built-up canon from these supplementary materials that surrounded the film would be thrown out the window because the next film in the franchise would completely disprove all the supplementary material that surround that first movie, except for the film itself. And then when the next movie comes along, the same process would repeat itself. That movie would also get a bunch of comics and novels that state that they're part of the canon of the franchise, the greater canon, but then that would be disproven by the next movie, and this would continue on up until 2015's Jurassic World. So in case you don't know, I'm sorry, but Alan Grant shooting a rocket launcher at a two-headed T-Rex isn't canon. Actually, is that a real thing? During the viral campaign for the 2015 film Jurassic World, Universal Studios, along with some fans, took it upon themselves to clean up the timeline a bit. However, this still left a couple of pieces of media that weren't really known if they were canon or weren't, mainly because they had pieces of information that lined up well with the film, and the events of said content would be so disconnected that the possibility of it actually happening is kind of 50-50. And that's why I'm making this video. With a few days before Dominion comes out, and I mean hopefully I get this out by like June 1st or 3rd, we'll see. And instead of you, the good viewer, going out of your way to find these pieces of Jurassic media and just cram everything within a couple of days. So in preparation for Dominion, let's watch one of the biggest film franchises in cinema history. Everybody, this is the full Jurassic Park timeline. I will say I'm kind of pissed that I have to cover the prologue in this video. I was really hoping the prologue would be part of the main film, and honestly it would have been really cool to have seen it in theaters. It was like, why Universal? Why you gotta make my job so much harder? Why can't you just let people see this in the theater? That doesn't count and you know it! Another thing about this video is we're not going to be covering every piece of information, like in the timeline in the Masrani Backroom site. They gave us the birthdays of certain characters and when certain companies are founded. I mainly skipped those. In this timeline we're just focusing on the major events that led to Jurassic Park and eventually Jurassic World. And I know some people are probably going to be a little hesitant of this video already because I've added so much soft canon stuff, like Jurassic Park the game and Jurassic World Aftermath. And also there's like a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to add in, but I couldn't because it was just so far removed with the film canon. I'd also probably mention that the film canon and the novel canon are two completely different canons. Like, the novel wouldn't have information that would aid the films themselves. They actually contradict each other a lot. I think a really good example of this would be how Dr. Wu and John Hammond actually die in the first book, but in the film canon they actually live past a lot of the events from the first film. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, I'll pretty sure I'll cover this all in the follow-up discussion video later on. But yeah, I think I've talked enough. Without further ado, let's begin the Jurassic Park timeline. We start our story, reluctantly, 65 million years ago, where the world is a lot different than ours. And I do mean that more than one way. Alright, so I am very much aware of the paleontological accuracies of this prologue, because this is supposed to take place 65 million years ago in North America, and I think of the 8 species that they show in this, only 2 or 3 are like actually belong there. But if you want to know my thoughts on it, I highly suggest you check out Edge's video. I agree with 90% of what he said in that video. He goes further into detail about the flora, and how some species should be replaced with species that are native to that region in time. That's the part I mainly agree with. But yeah, check it out. It's a good video. Just give it a watch. Anyways, a Tyrannosaurus regina, I mean a Tyrannosaurus imperator, I mean a Tyrannosaurus rex. Yeah, that's the one. And a swimming, time-traveling Giganotosaurus do battle. However, the Giga gets the upper hand and executes the Rex. Soon after the fight, a mosquito feasts on the dead animal before flying away. And given the science, the mosquito would have to land on a tree right after that moment and get stuck in some tree sap. This has to be the case because this mosquito would be the genesis of every single Tyrannosaurus in this franchise. Mainly these 3. 4? And assuming they keep things as accurate as they could, 1 million years later would be when the dinosaurs go extinct due to the asteroid. Fast forwarding to 1525, Isla Nublar is discovered by Spanish explorers, more specifically navigator Diego Fernandez, while another member of Fernandez's crew, Nicolas de Huela, would name the newly discovered island. The name Isla Nublar translates to Cloud Island, mainly because at the time of its discovery, Mount Sibo, the island's volcano, was active. It should be noted by this time, the island would already be inhabited by its own native people, the Bribri tribe. The Bribri people are an ancient tribe of natives that lived on Nublar for thousands of years, and then 1 year later, in 1526, the Mutras Archipelago, or as we'll soon call them, the Las Cinco Mortes, are also discovered. We now fast forward to the major events that will lead to the creations of the parks. In 1969, a flamboyant venture capitalist from Scotland, John Parker Hammond, would open Animal Kingdom in Nairobi, Kenya. Now a quick summary of John Hammond. He managed to make his own wealth in Petticon Lane, England. Also around this time he held similar parts to Animal Kingdom. They were all situated in other tropical locations, one of them even being in Costa Rica. Anyways, when Hammond opened Animal Kingdom, he relied to the likes of one Robert Muldoon as the park's game warden. Both Muldoon and Hammond would remain associates in the coming years. In 1973, a man by the name of Sanjay Masrani would find the company Masrani. The company would find success in its telecommunications network, which would put Masrani on the map with other tech giants at the time. A year later, in 1974, John Hammond would start a new partnership with Benjamin Lockwood. Their partnership would go as far to create the company International Genetics Incorporated, or InGen for short. All of this was done just 1 year after they established their partnership. It wouldn't be until 1981 where John Hammond would start putting down the initial groundwork to start Jurassic Park with the aid of Robert Muldoon. In 1982, John Hammond would hire Dr. Laura Sorkin, who up to this point has a bit of a history, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But Hammond hires her to present a proof of concept to the boards at InGen on extracting DNA from mosquitoes trapped in amber. Later that same year, InGen would lease Isla Sorna from the Costa Rican government. The lease is said to last 99 years. As soon as that was done, InGen began constructing facilities on the island. These facilities will be used to create, incubate, and care for the dinosaurs they manufacture, before transporting them to a secondary location for display. By this time, Dr. Henry Wu would also be part of the Jurassic Park project, and makes a suggestion to the InGen board to fill in the missing gaps in the dinosaur genome with frog DNA. This would ultimately mean they can make dinosaurs faster, especially compared to Dr. Sorkin's proposal of trying to make dinosaurs out of complete genomes. In the end, InGen would go with Dr. Wu's proposal and move him to chief geneticist instead of Dr. Sorkin. And naturally, she began growing some feelings towards some people at this point. In 1983, Hammond would begin construction of Jurassic Park, San Diego. Yes, everybody, before Isla Nublar was ever an option for this man, he decided to make Jurassic Park in San Diego, so it could line up with the other animal parks there, like Animal Kingdom and SeaWorld. What could possibly go wrong? In 1984, the first prehistoric animals are brought back using an artificial oval. The year after, Hammond cancels construction of Jurassic Park San Diego, and honestly, that was a good call, Chief. Within the same year, Hammond would lease the island of Isla Nublar from the Costa Rican government, another lease that would last another 99 years. And honestly, why not? Hammond would also later buy the rest of the Lustington Mortis. So remember how I said Hammond and InGen leased Isla Nublar, but it's kind of hard to make a park on an island that's inhabited? Sometime between 1985 and 1986, the Bribri tribe that lived on Isla Nublar were removed from the island. They have lived there peacefully up until InGen leased it. So InGen just kicked them out of their own island and, quote, put them in the ghettos. Yikes. In 1986, InGen would successfully hatch its first dinosaur on Isla Sorna. The first two species that were created are a velociraptor and a triceratops. In 1987, the last of the Bribri people would have been moved out of Isla Nublar and relocated into the mainland. With that done, Jurassic Park begins major constructions in 1988. Meanwhile, on Sorna, the park's T-Rex, or as some would fondly name Rexy, is born, and just 1 year after her birth, the T-Rex will be moved to Isla Nublar. By the 1900s, the final preparations will be made for Jurassic Park to launch. In 1990, the last mature animals on Sorna were brought to Nublar, and by 1991, the geneticists at Jurassic Park would perfect the cloning process. Before that time, the geneticists would use the DNA of yellow-banded poison dart frogs to complete the genetic sequences for the dinosaurs. But after multiple failed subjects, more specifically subjects 4X, 6X, and 7X, would be lost due to karyolysis. The geneticists would find success in using common reed frog DNA instead of the poison dart frogs. However, unknown to them at the time, the common reed frog has the innate ability to change sex. In 1992, Dr. Wu noticed the Velociraptor clones showing high degrees of intelligence. Robert Muldoon would make a similar observation when the colony of 8, or should I say, clonally, kill me, were seen testing the fences, but never the same place twice. It wasn't just collective intelligence, this was to the degree of problem solving. As Muldoon puts it, they remember. Around this time, Jurassic Park would introduce another raptor, infamously known as the Big One, and she quickly established herself as the alpha by killing all but 2 of the 8 raptors. This seems familiar. Later that same year, Sanjay Masrani, founder and CEO of Masrani Global, passes away, and his son, Simon Masrani, would inherit the company. Later that same year, Dr. Sorkin left for her own devices, successfully clones a group of troodons. However, due to the cloning process, the animals came out a bit abnormal. They were more food aggressive and vile than most dinosaurs, and so grotesque in fact, that John Hammond demanded the specimens to be destroyed. However, Sorkin would ignore these orders. She had put them in quarantine and would continue to research them in secret. On May 24th, 1993, there was an unknown incident at the geothermal power plant. It's not known exactly what this event might have been or what caused it, but it could be a premonition of the island's volcanic core stirring up again. Before the events of 1993, Benjamin Lockwood and John Hammond would discontinue their partnership after Lockwood recommends something to Hammond, but Hammond furiously refusing the suggestion. It's not exactly known what this might be. They alluded to this in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but they never really shared the specifics of it. And this would finally take us to the events of the first Jurassic Park movie. Due to their high intelligence and their semi-unstable nature, the park workers under Robert Muldoon transports the 3 remaining raptors to a high-security enclosure. They manage to transport the first 2, but run into complications with the 3rd raptor, who, you guessed it, is the big one. Joffrey, the gatekeeper, would be severely mauled and would die to his injuries. I think. It's a velociraptor. I'm pretty sure he died. At this point in time, the park was still under construction, but due to this accident, all construction at the park ceased. By this point, the park would have an on-site aviary, an aquarium, an in-progress roller coaster ride, possibly 13 functioning paddocks, and a few guest facilities. However, Hammond is put under pressure by his investors, who demand the park receive endorsements from outside opinions, and only then the park can be completed, if approved. Meanwhile, lawyer Donald Gennaro meets up with Juanita Rostango at the Mano de Mios amber mine. Donald originally hoped to have met Hammond there, but Hammond wouldn't come as his daughter was going through a divorce proceeding, and he wanted to be there with her. What did Gennaro and Hammond want to talk about? Possibly who to bring on as endorsers for the park. So Gennaro decided to bring on Dr. Ian Malcolm. Later on in the week, Hammond would visit the Montana Badlands to meet up with paleontologist Dr. Alan Grant and paleobotanist Dr. Ellie Sattler. He wants them both to come to Jurassic Park and join the very short list of endorsers to hopefully endorse the park. They are reluctant, promises to fully fund their dig for the next 3 years, and that's all they needed to hear to get in this man's helicopter. Man, I'm glad we're past this now. I think I said the word endorse too many times already. The next day, after Hammond meets with Dr. Grant and Dr. Sattler, we meet up with Dennis Nedry, who's the head programmer of Jurassic Park, is meeting up with Louis Dodson. Dodson works for a rival genetics company known as Biosyn, and the company wants to capitalize with their own dinosaur attractions. So it took me some time, but I found this bio of Biosyn, and the company is known for stealing ideas from other scientists. It's also the only biotech company which employs more lawyers and saboteurs skilled in corporate espionage than scientists. So, if at first you don't succeed, steal from the competition, I guess. Anyway, Dodson wants Nedry to steal certain dinosaur embryos from Jurassic Park. Them meeting up in Costa Rica was them finalizing the deal, and Dodson provides Nedry with a Barbasol can so Nedry can transport the dinosaurs out. It's mentioned that Jurassic Park has strict security checks entering and leaving. That's why they use the Barbasol can to transport the embryos out. So in the morning of the initial tour, Hammond flies with Gennaro, Malcolm, Grant, and Sattler. After a bit of a rough landing, the group takes to the jeeps and see their first dinosaur, a Brachiosaurus. From there, Hammond boasts a bit about the other attractions, mentioning that they have
a T-Rex.
And Grant discovering
They do move in herds.
Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, Jerry Harding with his daughter, Jessica Harding, spend some time together before the guests arrive. Jerry Harding is one of the park vets. He used to work as a veterinarian at the San Diego Zoo before being selected and offered a job in Jurassic Park. Actually, while he was working at San Diego, there was an incident where his daughter, Jessica, or Jess for short, climbed into the tiger exhibit of the zoo. Luckily, it didn't end like a dead meme. Anyways, Jess manages to spot some Triceratops doing a dominance display. However, they need to get moving. Jerry needs to attend to a sick Triceratops before they, along with other park workers, leave the island for the day. Back with Hammond and co., they make their way to the visitor center, where the group is presented with the initial tour of Jurassic Park. They are served a healthy bit of exposition on how the dinosaurs are made, with the help of Mr. DNA, then tour around the genetics lab, where the group meets with Dr. Wu, and Grant learns the park is breeding velociraptors. Soon after that, they see some of the adult raptors tear into a helpless cow, with Muldoon joining them, and giving some quick facts to Alan about the cloned raptors, while also explaining the situation of the big one and what she did. After that, they are served lunch before going on the main tour itself. However, with what the group has seen thus far, some major concerns are brought up, such as the ethics of bringing back extinct species, the safety and risks between the guests and the animals themselves, and as Ian Malcolm puts it, the potential chaos that might arise from this. With the feedback, Hammond is taken aback that the people he'd hoped would appreciate what he's done are the ones that are questioning the part the most, while Gennaro...
We're gonna make a fortune with this place.
Soon, Hammond's grandkids, Lex and Tim Murphy, make it just in time for the tour to begin. Everyone gets in their respective land cruisers but Hammond. Instead, he remains in the visitor center where we are introduced to Ray Arnold, another programmer of Jurassic Park. Meanwhile, a concerning tropical storm that is making its way to the island keeps everyone on guard. The hopes are it will change direction like an earlier storm. And with that concerning news out of the way, let the tour begin. They go by the Dilophosaur exhibit, who's a no-show, the T-Rex exhibit, who's a no-show, and according to this map, past 2 to 3 other exhibits who are also probably a no-show. They eventually make it to the Triceratops exhibit, and why didn't you put locks on the doors? Have you not played any of the park simulators? And see how bad of an idea that is. Spare no expense my ass, Hammond! The group meets up with Jerry Harding, who's attending to the sick Triceratops that he mentioned earlier to Jess. The group gather to observe the animal, with Sattler taking the lead to figure out what's wrong with it. She initially thinks it's lilac poisoning, but fails to find lilac seeds in the Triceratops' dung. So why is the Triceratops sick? We don't know. Back at the visitor center, it's soon realized the storm will hit the island. It's decided everyone should evacuate onto the boats before it's too late. Anyway, Sattler goes back to the visitor center with Jerry, while the rest of the group will return to the garage in the tour vehicles. And sooner than they hoped, the tropical storm hits the island. The storm itself causing complications with Nedry's initial plan of stealing the dinosaur embryos. It's now or never.
Could have been worse, John. A lot worse.
If only you knew, Ray Arnold. Dennis begins his operation by claiming he debugged the phones, and that the system would be compiling for 18 to 20 minutes, which might mess with some of the other systems, but it's nothing to be worried about, right? Right? Nedry proceeds to the embryo chamber with this debugging, shutting down the surveillance and security systems in the center. He manages to steal the embryos with no real hitch. Soon when this happens, Nedry's sabotage begins, with multiple systems in the park starting to shut down. Meanwhile, with the guests, they proceed to the garage before their vehicles stop. Back in the visitor center, it is chaos. More systems begin to shut down, and it's soon made apparent Nedry sabotaged the systems. But not all of them, just a few he needed to shut down so he can escape. And speaking of Nedry, he steals a jeep and makes his way to the docks to rendezvous with his accomplices on the evacuation boat. However, he messes up a bit and soon becomes lost. Back with our guest, we soon find out where they stopped. In front of the T-Rex exhibit. Now we all know the title of this video. We know Nedry sabotaged Jurassic Park. We know that 90% of the park's fences are interconnected. They're shut down. We saw that iconic shot, the water ripples. When you gotta go, you gotta go. The T-Rex breaks out. In the kerfuffle, the T-Rex would proceed to destroy one of the land cruisers. Dr. Grant would try to lure the Rex back into its enclosure with a flare, but Ian would intervene with his own. Ian gets injured and Gennaro gets eaten. Grant would manage to get Lex Murphy out, but Tim is still stuck when the Rex returns. After some poking and prodding, the Rex would get bored and send everyone over the edge. Literally. Man, that thing was sure spiteful that day. Back in the visitor center, Ellie makes it back in one piece, while Jerry heads to collect his daughter and make it from the boat. However, when Ellie rejoins with Hammond in the control room, it's collective chaos. Ray Arnold lists down all the things Nedry managed to do, with systems shutting down all around the park. Hammond requests Muldoon to find the guest, more specifically his grandchildren. With Ellie joining Muldoon in the search, it soon becomes apparent in order to get Jurassic Park back online, they need Dennis Nedry. Speaking of Nedry, he gets himself into a small accident after swerving off the road and getting stuck on a small waterfall. However, he soon finds the right road that would lead him straight to the docks. He just needs to get his car off the small cliff face. No biggie. Just after he takes a tumble and losing his glasses, he soon becomes prey to, isn't that good? Jesus Christ! Nedry soon falls victim to the young Dilophosaur as he drops the Barbasol can containing all the embryos and is killed. Speaking of which, remember how I mentioned Nedry had accomplices? On the docks, 2 people who were hired by Biosyn wait for Nedry. One Miles Chadwick and a native of the island before they were kicked out, Nema Cruz. Wait for Dennis, but like the dinosaurs earlier, is a no-show. So at this point, Nema has no idea about the greater mission or that InGen bred dinosaurs. Miles, knowing everything about the mission, only tells Nema that they need to retrieve the Barbasol can.
Hey, guess who's on the line? It's Dodgson! I got Dodgson here!
I forgot to mention, this game was made in 2011. The pair continue to wait for Dennis, but after the boat captain announces they will depart soon, Nema and Miles decide to head into the island to find Dennis. After some sneaking and stealing, they get their access pass, however the guard denies them entry due to the storm evacuation. Eventually they convince the guard to let them pass and start their search for Nedry. They continue through the jungle hoping to find him, but instead they find a powered down electric fence, which happens to be the Dilophosaurus exhibit. After Nema tests the fence and Miles activates a tracker to find the Barbasol can, they jump the fence. Literally. Upon entering the enclosure, they soon find Nedry's jeep, still stuck on top of the waterfall, which has dried up. Monsoons, man. Nema takes the lead and investigates the jeep. As soon as she opens the door, the Dilophosaur runs out spooking her. Before she was curious about what kind of zoo InGen made, but now she really presses Miles on the subject. But Miles shrugs it off. They search Nedry's body but can't find the canister. Nema suggests they follow Nedry's footprints to see if it had fallen off somewhere. But after retracing his steps, there's no luck. They don't find the Barbasol can. By this time, Miles checks the car again, but couldn't find the can. Nema heads back to the car to see if Miles missed anything, and after deducing what happened, Nema manages to find the Barbasol can. After finding it, Miles spills the beans with Nema, telling her the can contains dinosaur embryos, and that Isla Nublar had turned into a dinosaur zoo, essentially. But that's as much as he says, because soon after he restores the nitrogen coolant in the can, they are ambushed by a Dilophosaurus. After an exchange of fire, the Dilophosaurus back off. Miles and Nina agree they cannot return to the rendezvous point on foot, since, dinosaurs. So they attempt to get the jeep down. It goes as well as you'd think it would. Soon the kerfuffle gets the attention of other dilos. They find themselves surrounded. With not much option left, Miles pushes Nina to the ground and runs off. Gotta love the bad guy stereotype. And like the stereotype, doesn't go really well, because the Dilophosaurs ultimately go after Miles instead of Nema and kill him. Nema gets to the jeep and manages to start it again, but then crashes it. Once again surrounded, Nema tries to fight off the Dilos, but suddenly the Dilophosaurs retreat after hearing something. Nema checks on Miles to see if he's dead, which he is, and steals the can, but soon after she does, she's attacked by something else. She quickly retreats into the jungle, hoping to get away. Back with Alan and Lex, Tim is still stuck in the Land Cruiser that's currently stuck in a tree. Only in Jurassic Park. Grant climbs up the tree to get Tim, but then the car comes crashing down when he accidentally turns the wheel. They manage to narrowly escape. Back with Nina, her injury appears to be getting worse. She starts having trouble keeping a pace, and while this is happening, the animal that bit her earlier is on hot pursuit, with its entire family and neighbors. Nema loses her footing and then hangs on a cliff. Then the predator sends her off said cliff. Meanwhile with the Hardings, they end up running a little late to the boat. While they're driving down the road, they have personal discussion with each other. General things. Personal life. School tests. Apparently Jess is a shoplifter. Jerry soon realizes the fence don't have their usual amber and teal warning lights on. He doesn't think much of it at the moment. Happening simultaneously, Nema, after her fall, makes it to the dirt road. The same dirt road that Jerry and Jess are driving on. With Jerry almost running Nema over, but instead ends up knocking her out, he quickly collects Nema into the jeep and just starts driving the three of them to the visitor center. While on their way, Jerry assesses Nema's injuries, noting she's been envenomated by a possible dinosaur. But he knows the bite couldn't be a Dilophosaurus. Nema soon goes into shock due to the venom, but Jerry manages to stabilize her with a medkit in the jeep. Back at the T-Rex paddock, Muldoon and Sattler quickly check the area. At first they only find the one cruiser, what's left of Gennaro, and a very injured Ian Malcolm. They quickly load him on since there's a T-Rex on the loose and she isn't afraid to make her presence known. But after one last sweep and looking over the fence, Sattler manages to find the other car. Muldoon and Sattler quickly make their way down to check it out, but soon find the area empty. Nothing but footprints from Alan, Lex, and Tim. So they at least know they survived. And definitely safer than they are, because as soon as Sattler and Muldoon return to the Jeep, the Rex catches up and chases them down, but they manage to lose her fairly quickly. Elsewhere with Grant and the kids, they hear the Rex in the distance. They make their way up a tree where they see a herd of brachiosaurs eating on the treetops. After making some noise, Grant and the kids soon relax and sleep for the night. Back with the Hardings and Nina, Jess is stopped by a young Triceratops on the road. Jerry gets down and tries to get the animal into the enclosure. He manages, but when he tries to close the gate, the herd's alpha, named Lady Margaret, attacks, charging the gate off its hinges and trapping Jerry underneath it, while Jess is trapped in the Jeep, with the horn of the Jeep agitating Margaret even further. She continues to attack the Jeep until Jess manages to stop the Jeep horn, but Lady Margaret wouldn't be the only dinosaur they need to be concerned with, because the T-Rex soon comes to investigate the kerfuffle. Jerry manages to escape the gate before the Rex can crush him underfoot, and then the two dinosaurs fight each other, while Jerry helps Jess out of the Jeep and Jess makes her way to the maintenance shed while dodging the two battling dinosaurs. Jerry and Nima just barely make it out alive and lock themselves in the shed. The three of them hunker down in the maintenance shed till morning, but not before Jerry arms himself with the shed's tranq rifle. Meanwhile in the visitor center, everyone else hunkers down trying to figure out what to do next. Sattler confronts Hammond about his illusion of control over the park and its animals, as the two of them continue to worry about Alan and the kids, while dining on some fine ice cream. Nedry must have shut down the power to the coolers. That sick son of a bitch. Going back to Alan, Lex, and Tim, they are quickly awakened by a hungry young Brachiosaurus. After getting sneezed on, the three of them get back on the move, but Grant makes a startling discovery. The dinosaurs are breeding. Back at the visitor center, Hammond suggests they take a calculated risk. To undo what Nedry did to the system, Ray Arnold should shut down the entire park system. The hope is that the hard restart would wipe the system clean of what Nedry implemented to sabotage the park. After some arguing, Arnold begrudgingly shuts down the system, and the risk paid off. Well, sort of. The hard reset must have blown a fuse, so Arnold insists to go to the maintenance shed to restart the power, while everyone else heads to the emergency bunker. And so Arnold goes off. Alone. In an island full of dinosaurs. Back in the bunker, unsurprisingly, Ray Arnold hasn't returned yet. Gee whiz, I wonder what happened to him. In the island full of dinosaurs. Anyways, Muldoon and Sattler gear up to make it to the maintenance shed, while Hammond and Malcolm stay back to guide the pair in both finding the breaker and restarting the power. But on their way to the maintenance shed, they soon discovered the raptors had escaped their enclosure. Once they find the shed, Muldoon insists on Sattler to go on alone, because little did they know they were being tracked by the raptors. Ellie makes a run for it and makes it to the maintenance shed. Meanwhile, Alan and the kids come face to face with another fence. Seeing it's not powered and hearing their old pal Rexy behind them, they quickly climb the fence. Back with Sattler, Hammond ends up doing a terrible job leading Ellie to the power breakers, so Malcolm tells her to follow the black pipes that are currently hanging above her. Soon, Ellie finds the power breaker and begins restoring power to the park. As she does so, the fences start blaring an alarm. During this time, Tim is still stuck on the fence, and once Sattler pushes the breaker that brings power back to the fences, little Timmy gets electrocuted. But hey, at least the power is back. Okay, that's bad. But hey, there's Ray Arnold. Oh. Anyway, Sattler manages to escape the maintenance shed and the velociraptor that's currently in it. Meanwhile, this alarm caused by Ellie restoring the power would wake up Jerry in his own respected shed. Him and Jess leave the shed only to see Lady Margaret probably die to the T-Rex. Soon someone else in another part of the island is watching them. They soon fetch a cruiser for the stranded trio, which proceeds to take them to the visitor center. Meanwhile with Muldoon, he corners one of the raptors ready to shoot it, only to get killed himself. Back with Ellen and the kids, Dr. Grant manages to resuscitate Tim from his electrocution. The three of them then continue to the visitor center. While on their own way to the visitor center, Nema suddenly regains consciousness, but the effects of the venom had made her delirious. The Hardings tried to calm her down using some subpar Spanish from Jess and have her rest until they get to the visitor center. Grant and the kids would beat the Hardings to the center, as Alan leaves Lex and Tim there until he can find the others. Soon Alan manages to find Ellie, and instead of going back for the kids, he goes with her to the bunker with Malcolm and Hammond on an island full of dinosaurs. But I'm pretty sure he has a good reason. The kids will be fine, right? Right. So while Lex and Tim hide in the kitchen, Alan, Ellie, Ian, and Hammond get caught up to speed.
Figured out how to open doors.
Well, shit. While Alan and Ellie make it back to the visitor center to pick up the kids and get the phones back online, Lex and Tim try to evade the three raptors. They outsmart one, lock another in the freezer, and join up with Alan and Ellie. But before they could do the Hackerman thing, one of the raptors intervenes and it tries to force itself into the control room. So Lex, being a hacker herself, gets Jurassic Park back online. Grant calls Hammond, who calls the mainland, who calls the chopper to go pick him up. Yeah, but not the other group, I guess. Anyways, the raptor breaks in and chases our four heroes. They end up on the skeleton display before the second raptor appears. Oh, and the T-Rex. While the Rex battles the raptors, Hammond comes in with a jeep and the six of them hightail it out of there, while the Rex dispatches of the last Velociraptor. The known survivors quickly get on a chopper and leave the island, escaping Isla Nublar. Not forgetting, oh wait, after Hammond and his group got out via helicopter, the Hardings and Nema make it back to the visitor center and are greeted with the aftermath of the T-Rex and Raptor duel. They soon get in contact with the mystery party that helped them with the Jeep. The mystery party reveals themselves to be Dr. Laura Sorkin. However, when Jerry explains Nema's symptoms to Sorkin, Sorkin asks Jerry to give her a lethal amount of sedative to calm the effects of the venom. Jess heads back to the Jeep to pick up the darts, but not before seeing signs of the T-Rex being close. After she grabs the darts, she soon figures out where the T-Rex is. The Rex knocks Jess over, making her drop the darts, and soon Nia starts going into a seizure. Jess then rushes in, takes the darts, and runs up the stairs with the T-Rex in tow. Luckily for our survivors, the T-Rex goes off to the side, falling off the steps. While the Rex is withering, the Hardings give Nema the trank, and her condition improves immensely. They escape through the visitor center's windows, but the Rex makes it hard for them to make it across. Jess ends up going over the edge and starts hanging off the ledge. Jerry gets down, ready to catch Jess, but the T-Rex wants to say hello. Jerry quickly grabs the trank rifle from a Jeep while Jess tries to avoid the T-Rex's mouth. I mean, she's avoiding the jaws, I guess. After the Rex tosses Jess to the ground, Jerry's about to fire the rifle. However, Jerry has no darts, but a fully recovered Nema tosses him the dart case, and Jerry proceeds to hit the Rex with 3 trank darts, forcing the animal to retreat, but not before chasing the pair once again. Jerry and Jess hide behind the Jeep, trying to reach Sorkin on the radio. Once he does, he asks her to move the cruiser to distract the Rex. It works and the Hardings return to the visitor center. They then meet up with Nina and fill her in on some of the details. But when Nema is pushed to answer their questions, she ends up pulling a gun on the Hardings. Well, that's not very nice. As the day begins to end, 2 helicopters make their final sweep of the island in an attempt to rescue survivors. This includes the Hardings, Nina, Laura Sorkin, and a man by the name of David Banks, who is a genetic engineer and is the assistant for Laura Sorkin. The Alpha Dog team, as they dub themselves, consists of pilot Daniel Cafaro, who preferably called Decaf, Oscar Morales, who actually participated in the Exodius of the Riri people, and Billy Yorter. Wait, I heard that name before. Them, along with Bravo Team, a separate helicopter unit, are mercenaries hired by InGen. Alpha Team makes their final sweep when suddenly Bravo Team is attacked by an unknown hostile. Alpha Team quickly goes to aid Bravo Team. Sadly, they are too late. Once Alpha Team makes it to the LZ, Bravo Team appear to have been shot down. The culprit soon reveals himself as Vargas, who is a member of Bravo Team. Well, was, I guess. As Oscar and Billy enter the visitor center, they corner Vargas, while Compies run about, but something else is in the building with them. Billy makes it to the security office and helps Oscar corner Vargas. They manage to subdue him, but he appears to be deranged. Billy and Oscar make their way to the security office to see what might have happened. Using the cameras, they find their culprit. a blurry shape, and also find the Hardings leaving the visitor center with Nema holding them at gunpoint. Soon, a noise forces the mercenaries back into the main hall, where Vargas is taken by the mysterious dinosaur and is eaten. Oscar and Billy proceed back to their own choppers and head off. Meanwhile, Jerry and Jess are led by Nema. The group try to make their way north, but Nema's injury makes their progress slow. They rest up a bit, building a fire in hopes to keep the dinosaurs away. While they wait, Jess manages to steal the radio away from Nema. Jess manages to contact Billy on the radio, in which Billy tries to get Jess to tell them their possible location, and Jess tells Billy about the fire Jerry made. But soon, Nema finds Jess out and takes the radio back, threatening everyone with the gun again. Billy with the information gets Alpha Team to proceed north. They manage to find the fire, but soon get attacked by one of the park's pterosaurs. The attack knocks Decaf out, so Billy quickly takes over. Luckily for them, Billy manages to regain control of the helicopter and lands it safely. However, the initial attack damaged the helicopter's engine. Decaf stays back and hopes to fix it, while Billy and Oscar try to find the Hardings. And like that, they both leave Decaf alone in an island full of dinosaurs. Oh hey Arnold! Oscar and Billy make their way to the fire, but find the area to be empty, except for this Dilophosaurus. Billy tussles with it until Oscar manages to get the animal off. They soon hear something on an intercom and head in the direction of the noise. Back with the Hardings and Nema, they quickly come across one of the unfinished amusement park rides, the Bone Shaker roller coaster. Nema figures they'll get to where they need to go by going down the unfinished ride. Jerry goes and restores the power while Jess and Nema get the cars in the track. They get the ride going, but the ride is also discovered by a pair of Herrerasaurs. With some quick thinking, Jerry manages to change the tracks, but one of the Herrerasaurs manages to get on the ride. After one more loop, a few Herrerasaurs, and the ride slowly falling apart, the trio manages to escape. The Herrerasaurs, that is. While Jerry tries to save Jess, Nema attempts to get the crane working to save the cars. However, Billy manages to get the Hardings off the ride. With the 5 of them grouped up now, they all make their way back to the helicopter. But when they get there, Decaf is missing. After surveying the area and securing Nema, they manage to find Decaf's gun, which was jammed. They also find some footprints, and Billy finds some blood along with Decaf's helmet. Jeez. Wonder what happened. Billy wants to try and find Decaf, but soon the group is intercepted by the T-Rex. The group manage to escape again, but aren't done on the island just yet. They still need to find Dr. Sorkin and her assistant David at the field lab. Soon the group manage to find the field lab, and waiting for them is Dr. Sorkin. However, Sorkin shows no interest in leaving. The area the field lab is situated in is quite remote, and hard for most dinosaurs to access, or so we hope. However, Sorkin does ask for some boxes to be moved, cause space I guess. Billy, Oscar, and Jess take on the task, but it's soon revealed that Oscar and Billy know a little something. Coincidentally enough, the boxes Sorkin asked to be moved contain files of some of the park employees and experiments they've conducted. Oscar tries to find any info on Sorkin and her work, while Billy tries to convince Sorkin to leave the island. Through Sorkin herself and the files, we find out that Dr. Sorkin wanted Jurassic Park to be a nature preserve. But, as one would expect, her requests were mostly ignored by Hammond and InGen. It's also revealed in her files that Sorkin was a huge animal advocate back in the 70s, and that may have gotten her committed just a few times. Despite InGen's refusal, Sorkin would continue to make the same request to turn the park into a preserve. Up until now, that is. Billy tries to use this info to hopefully convince Sorkin onto the helicopter, but Sorkin makes it apparent that as long as John Hammond remains in charge, the animals may not be treated properly. Oh, Sorkin, if only you knew of the Lost World Jurassic Park. Eventually, Billy manages to convince Sorkin to leave the island. Now, if you're wondering about David is...
Oh, Debbie dead.
Debbie real dead.
This is confirmed by Sorkin herself. Upon agreeing to leave the island, Sorkin has a couple of things she wants to do before they depart, and she specifically needs help from Jerry to do it. Sorkin reveals she's been developing a way to nullify the lysine contingency. Now, if you're wondering what the lysine contingency is, here's Ray Arnold explaining that.
The lysine contingency is intended to prevent the spread of the animals in case they ever get off the island. Dr. Wu inserted a gene that creates a single faulty enzyme in protein metabolism. The animals can't manufacture the amino acid lysine. Unless they're completely supplied with lysine by us, they slip into a coma and die.
Anyways, Sorkin needs Jerry to help test her solution on a small group of parasaurs. Again, Sorkin, the Lost World Jurassic Park. The parasaurs in question were part of just one of her studies involving dinosaur communication. Once the animals are out, Jerry attends to one of them who has injured their foot, while Jess and Sorkin treat the water supply with Sorkin's lysine solution. Meanwhile, with Billy and Oscar, they continue to lounge around when suddenly someone starts the helicopter. It was Nima. She managed to escape the cuffs and get the chopper going, but Billy and Oscar managed to get on. They then gain control of the chopper, but after Nima sends a knife to the control panel, the chopper soon loses control. Back with the Hardings and Sorkin, they manage to treat the water and get it to the main island supply. All seems good when suddenly 2 other raptors appear. Oh yeah, the other raptors. While one of the raptors takes out a parasaur, Jerry manages to escape the other 2 and rejoins Laura and Jess. Now, if you're wondering where these 3 raptors came from, they were actually in quarantine with other dinosaurs and used the power outage to provide in their escape. Soon, the Alpha Team's chopper appears. Yay! Then crashes. Shit. The crash compromises the water tower, and the raptors try to take advantage of that, ramming themselves into the supports to try and bring it down. The trio on the water tower escape through another ladder located at the back, which would put them outside the enclosure. Once they're down, the trio make a break for the service tunnel. The raptors follow suit, but the 3 manage to get into the tunnel, securing themselves inside. Meanwhile, not so far away, both Nima, Oscar, and Billy survived the helicopter crash. However, Nima and Billy were knocked out. Billy manages to wake up to Oscar keeping guard. While Oscar scouts the perimeter, Billy sifts through the crashed helicopter, but finding nothing of use or worth salvaging. After that, Billy rummages through Nima's pack and finds the Barbasol can. He also discovers the embryos inside, but doesn't know what they are. As soon as Oscar returns, the 2 of them decide to make camp at the crash site. Oscar goes off in hopes to find Hardings and Sorkin, while Billy stays behind watching over Nima. It doesn't take long for Oscar to find the para-habitat and the service tunnel where the Hardings and Sorkin are hiding, with the raptors continuing to wait outside before one of them manages to open one of the doors. Oscar follows suit in hopes to get to the other survivors. Around this time, Hammond and his group of survivors make it to Costa Rica and are mended for their injuries. Malcolm is sent to a hospital where his leg is treated. Around this time, Hammond and Ingen will console on the situation at hand, and the board at Ingen will catch Hammond up on what's about to happen to the island. After everyone returned from the park, rumors start to spread about the park and the dinosaurs on it, but no one can confirm them. And Ingen is on full damage control mode at this point, trying to control the rumors. Meanwhile, at the crash site, Nima wakes up. She searches her pack, but can't find the Barbasol can. Soon after, Billy reveals he has it. Billy then starts pushing questions onto Nima about the can. Nima eventually reveals that the can contains dinosaur embryos and arranges a deal with Billy. Meanwhile, with the Hardings and Sorkin, they continue down the service tunnel and hope to get to the marine exhibit, or the aquarium, to use the working telephone, but little do they know that they're being followed by the raptors from earlier. Back with Nima and Billy, they continue to wait for Oscar at the crash site, but then the T-Rex returns, chasing a para, which forces them to leave. Back in the tunnel, Sorkin reveals to Jerry that they got the lysine into the main water supply, a fact he did not know until now. Now, the main fear Jerry is emphasizing is the possibility of dinosaurs making it to the mainland and disrupt the global ecosystem. Wait a minute, why does this sound familiar? Sorkin's reasoning is since all the dinosaurs are female, there's no real threat of them multiplying, right? Right? Sorkin also reveals she gave the lysine to the pterosaurs. Just kidding. Or is she? Back when Nima and Billy, they make it to the para enclosure with the T-Rex still on their tail. After a bit of dodging and the Rex adding another raptor to its kill count, Nima and Billy make it to the service tunnel. However, Billy soon finds out he dropped the Barbasol can. Deeper into the tunnel, Oscar continues to follow the raptors. He makes sure to evade them as he continues down, still hoping to join up with the Hardings and Sorkin. Back with Nima and Billy, they manage to find the Barbasol can. The only problem is the T-Rex that's hovering nearby. Billy reluctantly goes out, sneaking his way to the can. He manages to get it and runs back to the service tunnel. With the can secured, both Nima and Billy make their way down to the tunnel, but soon Nima sees something in the dark, and it's not a velociraptor. Billy remembers seeing something similar in the visitor center. They both agree to try and get the lights on using the power breakers, but fail at it, shutting down the power in the whole tunnel instead. Billy tries to get it back on, but ends up short-circuiting the breaker more, making the lights strobe. While this is happening, Oscar is finding it harder and harder to avoid the raptors, so he decides to attack one of them. The two of them wrestle before Oscar finally puts the animal down using his knife. Soon, Nima and Billy find him. Oscar tells the pair there's still 3 more raptors in the tunnel. Billy catches Oscar up on his misadventures and the shaving cream. Nima mentions Nedry, and Oscar retorts saying that the authorities are searching for Dennis in San Diego, which raised the question of who exactly sent the authorities after him. Was it Hammond on the phone? Or was it Biosyn when Nedry failed to meet up at the rendezvous point? After everything is said and done, the trio continue down the tunnel. Meanwhile, with the Hardings and Sorkin, they continue their debate on the ethics surrounding the dinosaurs. While that's happening, Jess steps away. Earlier, she stole Sorkin's cigarettes. She tries to have a smoke, but gets a raptor instead. She runs out with 3 raptors in hot pursuit. Jerry tries to fend them off with a pipe, but luckily Jess is forklift certified and rams one of the raptors. As they run down the tunnels, Oscar and his group joins them, and Oscar proceeds to scar one of the raptors. This in turn forces the raptors to retreat, or maybe because there's something wrong with the power reactor. Shortly after their reunion, the group soon realizes the pipes are bursting with steam, indicating there is an unchecked buildup of pressure in the power plant itself. If it goes unchecked, then, to quote Dr. Sorkin, it will pop like a balloon and take half the island with it. That sounds familiar. So not wanting that to happen, the group of survivors make their way to the power plant, with Oscar scouting ahead to make sure there aren't any dinosaurs en route or near the plant itself. The group make it to the main doors that leads to the power plant, but the main door is locked. Sora elects Jess to crawl through the vent so she can unlock the door from the other side. Once the group is inside, they proceed to remove a motor, vent the steam relieving the pressure, and like that, manage to save the plant and half the island. Oh hey, the Congratulatory Raptor Squad is here. The group get trapped in the plant with the raptors due to the failsafe. Now they need to open the door manually. Only problem is, the manual controls is where the raptors are. Oscar then volunteers to make a break for the controls, while the group make a diversion so Oscar can sneak around the lava flow. He then gets onto the main platform and then maneuvers around the raptors without being detected. But then, ye young One-Eye hears him, and the raptors soon corner Oscar. He manages to dodge their attacks, but before he can make it to the control panel, One-Eye jumps him. Before he succumbs to his injury, Oscar manages to get the main doors open for the survivors, before dying. Everyone escapes the power plant as the 2 remaining raptors chase them down into a supply closet. However, the raptors back off. Sorkin notes that's their fear response. Billy slowly melts down due to the death of Oscar, but the time for mourning may need to wait, because the closet the group barged into is occupied by this body, a paralyzed body. It's soon confirmed the body is Decaf, the pilot of the Alpha Team extraction unit. His body is undergoing the same venom that Nima and Vargas underwent earlier, but the most disturbing thing about his state is the fact that the dinosaur that did this laid its eggs in him, using his body as a nest. Getting more agitated by the death of his friends, Billy pulls a knife on Sorkin, demanding answers on what they're up against. What was the mystery dinosaur that took out Beta Team and Decaf? Sorkin reveals the dinosaurs are Troodon pectinodon, not to be confused with Troodon formosus, which we'll get to later. The situation continues to escalate. Billy forces Sorkin to take responsibility for the casualties his company has taken. After that, everyone begins to calm down, while Billy attends to his friend. Billy retrieves Decaf's dog tags and manages to sneak a grenade from his body before the group decides to move on. Before they can leave the closet, a pack of Troodon return to tend to their nest. They try to sneak into the room through the vents, but Billy and Nina fend them off. While Jerry tries to get the gate open, Nima manages to scare the intruding Troodons, or should I say, Intruodons. She manages to keep the animals at bay with a couple of flares. This gives the group enough time to escape through the gate, but the Troodons are in hot pursuit. Getting a little turnaround in the tunnels, the group managed to find a way to the marine exhibit, but at one of the junctions, the Troodons surprised them. Outnumbered, divided into two groups, and overwhelmed, the group is forced to split up. Nema and Jerry head down one tunnel, while Jess, Laura, and Billy head down another. Both groups try to fend off the Troodons with a flare, but soon Jess, Laura, and Billy are trapped between a locked door and a pack of Troodons. Meanwhile, Jerry and Nema manage to escape through a hatch which takes them to the surface. The pair manage to get to the tour path but have no idea where they are. The pair try to get a bearing of their surroundings before making their way to the marine exhibit. It's at this moment Nema opens up to Jerry, revealing she was one of the Breeby people who once lived on the island. Luckily for Nema and Jerry, a tour vehicle makes its way past them. They use the vehicle to make their way to the marine exhibit, and just in time too, because when they get there, Billy, Laura, and Jess find them in the marine exhibit. Yay, everyone's back together. However, the reunion is short-lived when Nema discovers the phones aren't working. Sorkin believes it's due to the computer system possibly needing to be booted up again. Billy then drops the bombshell and says the Costa Rica government would soon drop some bombs of their own onto Isla Nublar. This obviously leaves the group mixed about this new information, but it hits Sorkin pretty hard. Soon, Dr. Sorkin takes an elevator down to the marine exhibit control room where the phones are working, leaving everyone else behind. While everyone tries to find a way down, we get some information through Jerry about the marine exhibit. For one, it's fairly new, so he's surprised at the amount of progress the park construction workers were able to make. And secondly, he states he didn't see any marine animals on the species list. Oh boy, he's going to be surprised. Jerry manages to get the elevator working, and the group make their way down to Sorkin, but not before Billy flashes the embryos carelessly, getting Jess's attention. As they make their way through the facility, Jerry continues to be surprised by the progress that was made. Eventually, the group find Laura on the phone trying to reach someone in Engine, and asks for Hammond, then a guy named Mr. McGuire, and finally Peter Ludlow, John Hammond's nephew. Don't worry, Laura, you'll see him in the Lost World Jurassic Park. Man, everything that Laura wants is in the Lost World Jurassic Park. Laura reveals she's still on the island and demands to talk to someone of some authority, probably enough authority to cancel the bomb run. As she continues her call, Jerry uses an intercom to communicate with Sorkin, but Sorkin ends up taking everyone hostage. She promises to release everyone if the bomb run is stopped. Eventually, the person that Sorkin's talking to, who I think is Peter Ludlow, she did refer to him as Mr. Peter. Anyways, eventually Mr. Peter hangs up on Sorkin, and this sends Sorkin into a fit of rage. Jerry tries to talk her out of keeping them captive, but then Laura decides to release the park's mosasaur. Oh yeah, Jerry boy, the park has a mosasaur. This should be noted, this is not the same mosasaur from Jurassic Park. In the field journal you collect in the game, Laura only refers to the animal as a type of mosasaurus. It won't be until the website Jurassic Park Institute of the A to Z Glossary where the animal is identified as a Tylosaurus. So Laura releases the Tylosaurus into the marine exhibit area, while Billy grabs an emergency axe and tries to open the door. Once inside, Jerry tries to reason with Laura, but Laura already froze the systems to the exhibit, and states the Tylosaurus is free to leave whenever it wants. While Jerry tries to talk with Laura, the Tylosaurus rams the dome, sending Laura off the rail and into the exhibit itself. Soon the Tylosaurus hones in on her and eats Laura. Billy takes advantage of the phone and calls someone named Hoskill. Billy proceeds to inform them about the situation and hopes to evacuate the island before the bomb run begins. The remaining survivors try to leave the exhibit area until Billy double-crosses them. He still intends on making the deal with Biosyn and Nina, but Nina rejects Billy's offer. It's here where Nina reveals her intentions on being on the island to Jess and Jerry. Jess then attacks Billy, or so we think, before Billy pushes her back. With Nina on the Harding side, Billy escapes in the elevator and sets off the grenade he picked up earlier, collapsing the tunnel, flooding most of the rotunda, but not the control room. The group managed to escape before the area floods. Once inside, Jess reveals she got the canister off of Billy. But then another problem arises. The control room is slowly losing pressure, and the room is starting to flood. With little option left, the group decides to make a break for it through the Tylosaur enclosure itself. The hope is to use one of the main pipelines as cover from the Tylosaurus and make it to some caves. After a quick scuba diving 101 provided by Jess, the group gear up, release some fish to distract their hungry friend, and hop into the Tylosaur tank. The group stays close to the pipe, avoiding the Tylo, but Nina gets stuck under a rock. Jerry manages to help her through before getting surprised by the Tylosaurus. Nima manages to get into a cage and avoids the Tylo, but now the Tylosaurus turns his attention to Jess. Narrowly escaping, the survivors regroup and cautiously swim around the Mosasaurus using the rocks as cover. Once at their Miracle Mile, however, the Tylosaurus begins chasing them again, but the group manages to escape. After some quick traversing, the survivors make it to the south dock, where a boat is waiting for them, and Billy. Billy knocks Jerry out with a pipe, then he asks for the canister, before Nina punches him in the face. The two square off with one another while Jess tries to wake up Jerry. Billy and Nina continue their fight till Nina electrocutes Billy using the fence, but the shock knocks both of them to the ground, sending the canister flying out of Nina's pack. Billy surprises Nina with a punch to the head and sends the can to Jerry and Jess. For some reason. But before anyone can continue anything, the T-Rex appears behind Billy and Nina. Everyone stays completely still while the Rex investigates, but Jerry, with the can conveniently by his feet, seriously Billy, what were you thinking? Lightly kicks the can. The can then begins rolling off the dock, but Billy runs in after it. Big mistake. After the Rex eats Billy and conveniently tosses the can again, Nina grabs it and the remaining survivors run to the skywalk, but Jerry stays behind to distract the Rex. He partially succeeds. Nina drops the can but helps Jess up instead, and the Rex crushes the can underfoot. Finally, the end of that is to distract the Rex while Nina and Jess make a break for the boat. As Jerry goes through the cargo containers trying to avoid the Rex, he finally makes a run for the boat and narrowly escapes the Rex. Actually, there is an alternate ending where Jerry dies if you miss the last QuickTime event, but I'm going with the ending where all three of them survive. Once Jerry is on the boat, Jess finds some cash on the boat, and the three of them return to the mainland. What happens to them after they return? We don't know. Now that everyone's off the island, let's talk about some stuff, right. For one, the supposed bomb run on Isla Nublar ended up not happening. Why is that? We don't know. It isn't exactly known who, what, or how it got cancelled. All we know is that the bomb run never happened on Isla Nublar. And that is just one of a few messy details of the events after Jurassic Park. Malcolm would continue to be treated at the Costa Rican hospital. During his time there, his girlfriend, Sarah Harding, and if you're wondering, yes, there is a relation. Sarah Harding is Jerry Harding's daughter, but is the half-sister of Jess Harding. Anyway, Sarah visits Malcolm in the hospital and also is trying to find out if the rumors of resurrected dinosaurs was true. This is where she first meets Mr. Hammond. And if you're wondering if Sarah's worried about Jerry, probably not. They ended up having a fallout back in '92. On November in the same year, InGen began the process of deconstructing Jurassic Park, known as the Island Cleanup. The incident of June '93 would remain as an obscure rumor to the public. However, in Site B, the operations on Isla Sorna remained active. By 1994, not much is known about the state of the island during and after the initial cleanup. Documents confirm that seismic activity on the island would destroy the last of the stored embryos in the labs. Sometime in '93, Hurricane Clarissa would hit Isla Sorna. The damage caused by the hurricane would be too much, so InGen abandoned operations on Site B. However, before everyone evacuated, they released all the animals in their care to roam the island. At this point, John Hammond's hope to re-establish the park is abolished. Too much has gone wrong at this point. It's near impossible to salvage much of anything. The cleanup of Isla Nublar will come to an end in November of 1994. Henry Wu would be on site to catalog and document the animals. His findings showed the animals somehow managed to reproduce. He eventually figured out that the animals were able to reproduce due to the frog DNA they used to fill in the gene gaps. Around this time, the families of Ray Arnold, Robert Muldoon, and Donald Gennaro would sue InGen for the company's attempt to cover up their deaths. The family of Donald Gennaro would sue the company for $36.5 million, while Ray Arnold's family sued for $23 million and Muldoon's for $12.6 million. This combined with the deconstruction and the efforts to keep the islands a secret. To put it in better terms, the company is bleeding money by the throat. But not to worry, that gash is going to get a lot bigger. By 1995, Dr. Wu would write and publish his book, The Next Step, An Evolution of God's Concept. In the book, Wu details his ideology of how the next step in evolution, not for only humans, but other species, is through hybridization of different species through gene manipulation. Very similarly how he made the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park. It's actually due to his discovery of the dinosaurs able to change sex through frog DNA that compelled him to write this book. Later that same year, Ian Malcolm would be interviewed and he would disclose the events of 1993, straight out saying InGen created a dinosaur theme park, and if you're wondering if Ian signed a non-disclosure agreement, yes. And this would start a downward spiral in Malcolm's career. For one, InGen and the Costa Rican government assured all claims are lies, with the latter saying, and I quote, John Hammond and InGen's work is filed under genetic research for an ecological preserve. There is no evidence or credibility to far-fetched claims of living dinosaurs, unquote. Due to this, Malcolm would lose his tenure at the university he worked at for allegedly taking money even though he didn't. The Washington Post and the Skeptical Inquirer refuted his claims under pressure from Peter Ludlow. After all that, the cover-up worked, and Jurassic Park was chalked up as another rumor. But this would open to the events of the Lost World Jurassic Park. So 1997, the Bowman family on a yacht cruise find Isla Sorna. They came there initially to enjoy the beach and possibly having some lunch. Their daughter, Kathy Bowman, would wander off and discover a Compsognathus. She would feed the lone animal before the rest of the pack/flock finds her. Soon Kathy is attacked by the swarm of supposed scavengers, but would be saved by her family and henchmen. She would be rushed to the nearest hospital in the mainland, where InGen would acquire photos of the girl's injuries. 48 hours later, the board of directors would assemble, led by Peter Ludlow. It is here where John Hammond would lose grip of his company as the board of directors elect Peter Ludlow to be the new head of InGen. Peter suggests the company stops the preservation of the islands and extract the species to make a new theme park and use the profit they make off of that to pay off the expenses that the company has been burdened with due to the 93 incident. Whether it be the families of the deceased, deconstructions of the facilities on site, and maintaining the island's secrecy, thus the plan to extract some of the assets from Isla Sorna begins. Sometime after that, it's not known how long exactly, but AJ Sindhu would meet up with his old friend Roland Timbo. AJ would proceed to tell Timbo about getting a call about InGen's expedition, trying to convince his old friend to go. Eventually Roland agrees and joins the expedition to Sorna after beating up a guy for not being the most appropriate patron. I know that these are deleted scenes. Some of the few times I watched The Lost World on TV networks, they actually incorporated these scenes in the film. So I felt I'd have to add them in here, especially since they add some context to people's actions and decisions in the movie itself. Later in May, Wu and his colleagues would produce the first genetically engineered hybrid. It was... flower. The flower was ultimately named Cretaceous wutansis. Wutansis. I see what you did there, wutansis. But it's known more commonly as the Wu flower. The process of making the flower actually changed Wu's perception of hybrids being the future, so much so he suggests making an updated version of his book, and it would be the creation of the Wu flower that would catapult Wu's popularity in the public, grabbing international media attention and catch the eye of a certain CEO of a certain company. On November 2nd, John Hammond summons Ian Malcolm to his estate. It should be noted at this time Hammond has fallen gravely ill. What is he sick with? We don't know. Ian meets up with Lex, Tim, and then Peter Ludlow. They have a small argument about nothing much, morals, ethics. destroying Ian's career. Peter would also reveal he will be in charge of InGen, not Hammond. Soon, Malcolm talks with Hammond, where the latter reveals the existence of Site B, the ground floor operations of Jurassic Park. He reveals that the animals on Sorna have surprisingly flourished for 4 years, uninterrupted by human interference. Despite the animals on Sorna being lysine deficient, they somehow managed to thrive and adapt. However, Hammond reveals due to the incident with the Bowman family, and the sudden change of power within InGen, the company is prepared to raid the island. Hammond's hope is to get a complete photo record of the animals on Sorna to rally public support to contain and quarantine the islands to prevent any further human excursions. So Hammond presents Ian to the team he's forming, a kind of suicide squad, if you will, to land on the island. Ian is very adamant to go on this trip, for good reason, but once Hammond reveals a paleontologist in the research expedition is Sarah Harding, Ian's girlfriend, and that she's already on the island, with the rest of the team meeting them in 3 days, Ian heads out to the island with the other 2 members. He meets up with Eddie Carr first, who is the expedition field equipment expert, who's still constructing some of the devices and vehicles they'll use. Soon they're met by their other member, Nick Van Owen, a video documentarian, and Malcolm's daughter, Kelly Malcolm. Kelly insists that Ian take her on the expedition, and logically, Malcolm says no. Eventually, the research expedition commences, with Malcolm rushing everyone because instead of leaving within the initial 3 days, the expedition is leaving in 3 hours. With the 3 members, or so we think, head to Sorna, the group would soon find Sarah observing a herd of stegosauruses. Their initial reaction to the dinosaurs are as expected. Soon, Sarah manages to find out how the animals were able to survive without lysine. Play the clip.
Look at the diets of the herbivore species that are thriving. They eat mostly agma beans, soy, anything lysine rich. And the carnivores, well, they eat the herbivores.
Sarah then moves in closer to the herd and finds one of the younger stegosaurs, but when her camera starts acting up, spooking the baby, the adults attack, but leave the area soon after. As the group returns to camp, Ian tries to convince Sarah to return home with him, but Sarah is adamant. She wants to stay and try to prove and disprove theories on dinosaurs, and now she has the chance. But before the couple can finish their conversation, Eddie and Nick soon see there's a fire at base camp. Once they return, they find out Kelly stowed herself away in one of the vehicles and started the fire to prep some dinner. Once everyone is rounded up, Ian tries to get in contact with the boat to get him, Kelly, and any other person who wants to leave off the island. But soon, everyone is interrupted when another InGen team shows up. They soon reveal themselves to be Peter Ludlow's team, or better known as the InGen Hunters, who have come 3 days ahead of schedule to rally up some of the island's dinosaurs. The excursion is led by Roland Timbo, who only agreed to the trip if he can hunt one of the tyrannosaurs, preferably the buck. After the hunters capture a few species, Roland and his friend AJ manage to find a tyrannosaurus nest, where a baby is found. They devise a plan to lure the Rexes to a more suitable area, so they kidnap the baby. Jesus Christ, guys. Now this is where things kinda get a little tricky. So the reason why the baby T-Rex is crying out is because its leg was broken. Now, naturally we'd assume Roland and AJ would have snapped the youngster's leg in two, but in a deleted scene, it's revealed that it wasn't Roland or AJ or any of the other InGen hunters, but rather, it was Peter Ludlow. Yeah, apparently the guy got drunk after the successful day of capturing dinosaurs before falling on his ass conveniently hitting the Rex's leg, thus breaking it. So, yeah, do what you will with that info. Soon Hammond's team finds the Hunter's base camp, and assuming what I said below is canon, Ludlow sobers up to give a presentation to the board of InGen via Zoom call, where he shows the board their success on Sorna, showing a few copies and a promise to showcase other species they managed to capture. Ludlow also reveals his plan to resume construction of the cancelled Jurassic Park San Diego, where he plans on showcasing the animals there. We'll soon see why that's a bad idea. While this is happening, however, Hammond's team devise a plan to get the animals free. Lucky for them, they have a Nick Van Owen. While the InGen hunters are distracted, Hammond's team managed to get all the animals out, and they show their appreciation by destroying the hunters' base camp. Roland and AJ soon need to jump from their hiding spot due to a car taking flight. In the midst of the chaos, Team Hammond finds the baby Rex and kidnap it, and bug out of there before anyone notices them. But once the dust settles, the hunters soon find out that they are not the only people on the island, evidenced by the Dudley lock that's been sheared off. Soon Nick and Sarah find each other, with Nick carrying the baby Rex. They load it in one of the vehicles and make their way back to the RV, but not before passing Eddie, who's setting up the hide. Meanwhile, Kelly and Ian, back in the RV trailer, try contacting the mainland to get a boat to pick them up. Their efforts, however, are fruitless. Soon, Sarah and Nick make it back to the trailer with the infant Tyrannosaur, and Kelly gives some useful and oftentimes overlooked survival tip. If the animal is giving off a distressing sound like the baby Rex is, maybe it's best to get out. So with that in mind, Ian takes Kelly to the hide with Eddie. The three of them hang out, fun, with Ian assuring Kelly she is safe. Well, shit. With the very obvious bad sign, Ian tries to contact Nick and Sarah, but the two of them are too preoccupied by the baby Rex's injuries. Soon, Ian takes it upon himself to warn them in person. Meanwhile, with Nick and Sarah, they manage to successfully fix the Rex's leg. Eddie and Kelly see the parent Rexes making their way to the RV. Ian manages to make his way back in time to warn the pair, but wasn't fast enough to get everyone out, cause the Rexes have found the trailer. After rescuing their baby, the Rexes return to the forest before they come back with a vengeance, flipping the RV over and tossing half of it off the cliff. Soon, Eddie Carr returns to the RV and bravely tries to save everyone. However, the Rexes would return a third time, destroying the vehicle and eating Eddie Carr. This sends both the RV and Eddie's car over the cliff, but everyone in the RV manages to survive. And I have to agree with Bessen's lot on this one. Eddie was a hero. Rest well, Eddie, you magnificent bastard, you. The remaining survivors are soon discovered by the engine hunters, who also found Kelly in the hide. The two groups then return to the hunters' base camp and find that both parties are practically boned, because the animals that Hammond's team released destroyed the hunters' radio, and Hammond's team's radios were in the trailers as they careened off the cliff. Both parties agreed to travel together to an old communication center elsewhere on the island. Because all 6 islands are volcanic, Hammond made it so that the park and Site B ran on geothermal power. Due to that, they don't need to worry about circuit breakers or fuel. The plants are basically self-sufficient. But the trek will be dangerous, as close to their route is the Velociraptor nesting grounds. With this in mind, the group begin their trek to the communication center, deducing it to be the best course of action. The group make their way from the coast of the island to the interior, where they run the risk of encountering the island's more predatory residents. But on the way, Ian gives a good dose of wisdom to Peter.
Taking dinosaurs off this island is the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas, and I'm gonna be there when you learn that.
Well said, Malcolm. Eventually, the group stop to rest up, but one of the members, Dieter Stark, breaks from the group because nature calls. And nature answers with a compy. Dieter tries to tase the animal before getting lost and falling into a ravine. Soon he's swarmed by a whole flock of compies, but he manages to escape, for now. Unknowing to Dieter's situation, the group continue on. Back with Dieter, he soon becomes more exhausted, and the flock of compies return, this time finishing the job. Some time passes before the main group realizes Dieter is missing, so Roland and 2 other members go looking for him, while the rest of the group continue to the ridge, where they'll set up camp. Soon night falls, and the group sleep, with Roland managing to return, and they also manage to find Dieter.
Just the parts they didn't like.
Roland informs the few that are awake about finding the communication center. The plan is to climb down to avoid the raptor nesting site. But they may need to improvise on that plan, because the Tyrannosaur pair have found this group again. Kelly and Sarah managed to stay still, avoiding the Rex, but Carter didn't get the memo on don't move a muscle. So when he panics, Everyone panics, and the female Rex proceeds to chase the main group. Meanwhile, the male stays behind in the camp. Roland attempts to shoot at it, but soon discovers his bullets have been taken. Meanwhile, the female Rex would kill 2 more members before Ian shows up. Meanwhile, Timbo, forced to improvise, ends up tranking the T-Rex. The main group, however, in a panic, goes into the long grass and proceeds to be taken out by the velociraptors in wait. The group would lose over a dozen hunters to the raptors alone. Ian's group, who fell behind though, run through the long grass as well in hopes of getting to the communication center. They manage to get there without seeing any raptors, but they are far from unscathed. Nick runs ahead to the communication center to hail a rescue. Sarah, Kelly, and Ian lag behind. Nick makes it and calls in a chopper. Meanwhile, Sarah, Kelly, and Ian also make it to the center, but are ambushed by a trio of velociraptors. Sarah and Kelly split off with Ian as he tries to distract one of the raptors. But then the other 2 raptors focus their efforts on Kelly and Sarah, who are trying to find refuge in a shack. Eventually the raptors break through. When Ian finally manages to get to the shack, he is cornered by one of the raptors. Kelly gymnasts her ways in and sends one of the raptors flying, impaling it on some debris outside. Sarah then gets cornered on the rooftop with one of the raptors, while having another biting at her ankles, but manages to get the rooftop raptor to meet the ground raptor, and soon the raptors engage in a pretty brutal fight, to be honest, and shows a clear difference between the big one and her posse compared to these more feral raptors. Soon Sarah joins with Ian and Kelly, who escort her to a rescue chopper. Man, that was fast. On the chopper, we soon see that it was Ian who sabotaged Roland's gun. But as the group fly over Sorna, they see that InGen managed to secure one of the Rexes and are prepping it for transport. The company would also track down and capture the baby Rex and have it transported to the San Diego facility, but they would not capture the doe. Why? We don't know. Peter and Roland would meet for the last time. Peter offering Roland a job at the zoo, but Roland very hauntingly responds with,
I believe I've spent enough time in the company of death.
Now this happens a bit off screen, but basically, on transit between Sorna and San Diego, the Rex would experience side effects from the tranq that was given to it. I'll let this guy explain.
Why the hell wasn't it tranquilized?
It was. Roland hit it with 2 darts of concentrated carfentanil, over 10 milligrams.
10 milligrams should have put it into a coma.
It stopped breathing, so we gave it naltrexone to counteract the effects, but we didn't know how much to give it.
You administered an antagonist without knowing the proper dosage. You put the animal in a narcoleptic state.
So basically during the kerfuffle, the Rex managed to escape its restraints and proceed to attack the crew. A few members would manage to lure it back into the cargo bay, but this would stir up some other complications later on. In the early morning of the very next day, Peter Ludlow would make a presentation on the docks as a ship carrying the Rex makes its way to San Diego. However, the boat ends up being early and is heading into port way too quickly. Soon the vessel appears and destroys the dock. Once on deck, guards, officers, and InGen personnel find some of the crew to be dead, and seeing the restraints that held the T-Rex destroyed. Soon Sarah and Ian make up what might have happened before an officer haphazardly opens the cargo doors, and strolling on out is the male Tyrannosaurus, who proceeds to escape the docks unchallenged. Thinking on their feet, Sarah and Ian devise a plan to lure the Rex back in the cargo hold using the infant. They interrogate Peter to find out where it is and make their way to Jurassic Park San Diego. Meanwhile, the Rex makes its way to a suburb, finding a relatively fresh water source, I wonder if it's a chlorine pool, eats a dog, poor dog, and scares the family half to death, before returning to the streets to cause more problems, on purpose. Meanwhile, with Ian and Sarah, they manage to find the infant and kidnap it again. They soon find the Rex dining more on the local population of traffic lights. Eventually they manage to get the Rex's attention and have it chase them down. Ian and Sarah would manage to successfully lure back the Rex to the docks. They themselves make it to the vessel and dump the baby in the cargo hold. As they dive off the side of the ship, Peter, desperate to recover from this disaster, tries to capture the baby Rex on his own, although he would soon find himself cornered by the buck. After a failed escape attempt, it would be the baby who would ultimately kill Peter. Sarah then loads a tranq dart with the proper amount needed to knock the buck out, and not, nearly kill it. Take some notes, Timbo. She managed to trank the Rex before the local PD can put the animal down, and the pair managed to successfully secure the 2 Rexes. Soon local forces managed to get the transport ship back out to sea, with a whole military convoy keeping an eye on it. The ship is sent back to Isla Sorna, where it would successfully release the buck and the baby Rex, who would reunite with the doe. And that ends the Lost World Jurassic Park. And due to certain events in this film, I'm not gonna name names, certain ramifications for the greater world would be implemented. For one, the now infamously known San Diego incident would be a lasting example for the greater public and would reveal to the world that dinosaurs exist and put InGen under fire. After the San Diego incident, the UHCS, or the United States House of Committee of Science, passed the EMPGR, the Ethical Negligence Within Paleogenetic Resurrection, or simply and better known as the Gene Guard Act. Basically, this bill prohibits anyone from creating or cloning prehistoric species, not only dinosaurs, but also plant life and also Cenozoic creatures, just in general. This forces InGen to halt any possible ideas that involve Jurassic Park. The bill also extends to the 2 islands and its animals, making the 2 islands a restricted quarantine zone and labeled all the dinosaurs on the islands as endangered species. Due to all of this, InGen had no choice but to be sold out. The company at this point is bleeding mad money due to the San Diego incident. And with that, the truth of Jurassic Park became public knowledge as well. But lucky for InGen, Simon Masrani, the current CEO of Masrani Global, buys InGen within the year of 1997, with the blessing John Hammond. Both John and Masrani were actually good friends. However, we won't know, and nor will Hammond find out what Simon would do with his company, because within the remaining days of 1997, John Parker Hammond would pass away. It's not exactly known how he passed. The info on the Masrani site is very to the point. By 1998, InGen would be fully assimilated into Masrani Global, and 100 days after the initial purchase of the company, Masrani Global would begin illegally cloning new species of dinosaurs, going against the Gene Guard Act. Also within the same year, Masrani would begin conceptual work for Jurassic World. By 1999, Masrani Global would gain limited access to both Isla Sorna and Isla Nublar. They would breed not only new species, but new generations of older species on Sorna. These individuals would be released into the islands, however their sudden introduction would throw the already unstable ecosystem off balance. The list of these new and old but refined species are a second generation of velociraptors, Ankylosaurus, Corythosaurus, supposed Parasaur Gen 2s. I say supposed because while the Paras in JB3 are different, they might not be Masrani clones, as we see green Parasaurolophus in the first Jurassic Park, so Ceratosaurus, a second generation of Brachiosaurus, and everyone's favorite piscivore, the Spinosaurus. On August 25th, 2000, InGen's prototype iron analyzer would discover trace fragments of DNA in a mosasaur skeleton. I've seen so many people ask, how did they get the DNA of a marine reptile? Well, now you know. Though I was all in for the idea that a mosquito fed on a breaching or beached mosasaur. I don't know, anything's possible in this universe. There's a time-traveling Giga, for Pete's sake! Later in December of the same year, Masrani would promote Dr. Wu, who, by the way, was still working for InGen at this point, and during the whole kerfuffle of 1997, would bring him on board for the Jurassic World project. But before the creation of Jurassic World, we first need to dive into the events of Jurassic Park 3. We begin in the 23rd of May, and the existence of dinosaurs is well known to the public. People who live close to the island start scouting trips and boat tours around the island, giving tourists the possibility to see these animals. However, poachers and other exotic trophy hunters would make their own excursions on the island, and if they weren't met by the InGen security team, they would have to deal with the animals themselves. Hell, by this point, Costa Rican hospitals would see a spike in unusual injuries due to these unsuccessful excursions. Anyway, one of these tourist traps is Dinosaur. See what they did there? It's terrible. Moving on. On this trip, we follow Eric Kirby and his legal guardian, Ben Hildebrand. The two of them, along with the dinosaur crew, which consists of 2 crewmates, avoid the air patrol and begin the parasailing trip. However, the group are soon killed by a mysterious predator. In fear of the boat crashing, Ben and Eric manage to detach themselves from the boat. However, they would crash land on the island itself. Now, I'm just going to keep this short. I think the predator that killed the crew is the Spinosaurus. Some people theorize it was raptors. Some people theorize it was the pteranodons. Logically, it's probably the Spinosaurus. Jumping ahead 8 weeks, we join up with Alan Grant, visiting his friend Ellie Sattler. And Sattler throws some mad shade at Jack Horner.
Just tell him I'm not going to lose the Jack Horner quota. My editor thinks he's a paleontologist.
Also, no, Grant and Ellie are not together. Ellie ended up marrying Mark, who works at the State Department. Remember that for later. I should probably mention there is a canon reason why Alan and Ellie never settled together. The Jurassic Park 3 trading cards by Inkworks, yeah, your boy went real deep researching this one, has bios at the back of each card. If you collect enough cards, you can kind of put together a bit of a narrative that's going on. They're a small story between the characters. The trading card states Alan wasn't able to leave the islands behind, more specifically Isla Nublar. He was more invested in his work, and ultimately Ellie moved on, while Alan was taken by the events of the island, trying to separate what was real dinosaurs from Hammonds and Ingens tinkering up their genome. While Grant and Ellie chat, Grant mentions his current work and hypothesis that raptors have a resonating chamber in their skulls, which makes them extremely efficient in vocalization and communication. So I have to make a quick note about this, because me and my friend love poking fun at it, but because of this discovery / theory, Grant surmises that that raptors in universe, and I quote, are smarter than primates. After meeting up with Ellie, Alan then makes a presentation about their theory on raptor intelligence and vocalization. The goal of the presentation is hopefully get investors on board to fund Grant's digs and research. However, the audience seems more interested in Jurassic Park and the San Diego incident, and a few people suggest that Grant, or a scientist, should study the animals on Sorna to confirm these hypotheses. However, Grant makes this comment, which I personally think a lot more people should take to heart when it comes to the franchise.
Dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago. What is left of them is fossilized in the rocks, and it is in the rock that real scientists make real discoveries. Now, what John Hammond and InGen did at Jurassic Park is create genetically engineered theme park monsters, nothing more and nothing less.
Are you saying that you wouldn't want to get onto Isla Sorna and study them if you had the chance?
No force on earth or heaven could get me on that island.
Yeah, hold that thought, Grant. Around this time, the parents of Eric Kirby would hire the likes of 3 mercenaries to help them on a very illegal and amateur expedition on Sorna to hopefully find their son. We join up with Udesky, NB Nash, and Cooper, who are testing out some weapons at an airfield. By the way, get used to that ringtone. The results of their tests are quite explosive. We meet back with Alan and his site manager / associate professor, Billy Brenham. They meet up at a dig site in Montana, however they won't be able to stay long due to expenses and an investment Billy made. Using a 3D printer, they managed to make the resonating chamber of the Velociraptor, and let's just say, it's spot on. But before they can continue, a man by the name of Paul Kirby disturbs them. He wants to make a proposition to Alan over some dinner with he and his wife. After Billy steps in, thanks Billy, they meet up with the Kirbys, Paul and Amanda. The couple then sell Grant about how they are adventurers, and for their wedding anniversary, the Kirbys want Alan to guide them as they charter a flight over Isla Sorna. Apparently they managed to pull this off despite Sorna being a no-fly zone, because Paul Kirby apparently has made some friends in high places in the Costa Rican government. Everything is essentially set up. All they need now is a field guide, and the Kirbys want Alan Grant since he's pretty much one of a handful of people who actually seen these animals. Well, a handful in the city of San Diego. Reluctantly, Alan agrees, but not without pay. So much for no forces on Earth And on July 18th, the trip begins. And tagging along with Alan is Billy, although Alan's intentions of him coming might be more cynical than we'd think. Anyways, after a quick fever dream, the plane makes it to Isla Sorna, but as they enter, they get a warning from the Costa Rican government via radio stating they're in a no-fly zone, but the group press on, managing to see a variety of species in the plane alone. However, when the pilot and Paul make comment of possibly landing, Alan freaks out before getting knocked out by Cooper. After another possible fever dream, Alan reawakens, and to his dismay, find out they landed. The three mercenaries set up a perimeter around the airstrip while Amanda shouts into a megaphone, calling out for Ben and Eric. Which, honestly, not the best idea, as the new visitors are soon discovered by a large predator. Two of the mercenaries make it back on the plane, leaving one man behind. They manage to get the plane going, however, rushing out of the forest is Cooper. Not able to slow the plane down, and Cooper's poor area awareness, the Spinosaurus grabs Cooper, but gets slammed by the plane, which both injures the Spinosaur and causes the plane to crash. Before the group could recoup, trying to call out for help using the satellite phone, the Spinosaurus finds the group again, destroying the plane even further and killing Nash. After being tossed around a bit in the plane, the group soon escaped the wreckage while being pursued by the Spinosaurus. Probably mad at them for ramming a whole plane into its side. Must have hurt like a motherfucker. After losing the Spinosaurus, the group find the carcass of another dinosaur and what's dining on it. The Rex then pursues the group despite Grant's recommendation of standing still. The Rex pursues them before they encounter the Spinosaurus, and we all know what happens next. The Spinosaurus kills the T-Rex. So, I originally wanted to state what I thought about this T-Rex, because there's a lot of contention of it either being like a completely different T-Rex, or if it was the baby Rex from The Lost World. And I had written a whole argument within a single page of this script to support the fact that this Rex is the infant. But because it's so long, I'm gonna save it for the discussion video. But yeah, to put it all on the table, to put all my cards out there, I don't think this Rex is a different individual. I think this Rex is actually the baby from the Lost World Jurassic Park. But yeah, we'll talk about it in the discussion video. Grant and Billy push the Kirbys, demanding answers about this expedition, and the Kirbys come clean. Amanda and Paul are divorced, Ben is Amanda's boyfriend, and both Ben and the Kirby's son, Eric, are missing on Isla Sorna. Despite their pleas to the embassy, US government, and the Costa Rican government, the powers at hand decided there's nothing they can do about it. Hold that thought, greater powers! Anyways, after all the info is on the table, Grant decides to head back to the coast with Billy. The Kirbys very ambitiously want to look for their son, even though Grant's like, yeah, 8 weeks. Nah. So everyone converges to the plane wreckage, salvaging what they can. Billy and Alan manage to confirm the predator that pursued them as a Spinosaurus, but upon the two of them figuring this out, they're confused, because Spinosaurus wasn't part of InGen's list. So I realized now I never mentioned what the InGen list is. So the InGen list is a full catalog of all the species InGen both managed to gestate and extract DNA from. However, the catalog would alter depending on what species InGen wanted to showcase, which is why you probably wouldn't see Troodon or the Tylosaurus in the original list, since the latter of those specimens were meant to be destroyed, with the other one kept a secret. The InGen list would inevitably become public knowledge after the San Diego incident, however. Also, another thing I want to preface, I like how Billy is trying to ID the Spino. He first says, Suchomimus, and honestly, fair guess, it's one of the larger Spinosaurs. But then Grant says no, think bigger, and this boy responds with Baryonyx? which is significantly smaller. Even in the film canon, the animal is shorter. He said, "Bigger, Billy! Think, Billy, think!" Soon, Grant and Billy push Paul Kirby about their adventurous selves. It turns out it's all bull. Paul talked his company up as being this massive distributor, but they're actually a paint and tile shop. So that check that Paul wrote, yeah, no good. So everyone grabbing what they can reluctantly follow Grant to the coast. Eventually, they actually find Ben and Eric's parachute. Surveying the area, the group managed to find a camera that was with the pair during the parasailing trip. And from the footage, they see that Eric made it out alive, but can't say the same for Ben. Amanda runs off, but soon her and Paul find some raptor eggs. The group salvage what they can from the parachute and move on, with Billy lagging behind a bit. Wonder what he was doing. The group managed to find a worker village, but sadly there's no power, so they can't use the phones. They continue through and find a cloning lab where the dinosaurs are hatched, along with some weird embryos in tubes, and strangely enough a raptor head as well. Wait a minute. After being pursued by the raptor for a few minutes, the group leave the worker village as the raptor calls for backup. The group soon spooks a herd of cretaceous and parasaurs, but in the mayhem gets split up. Both Grant and Udesky get isolated, while the Kirbys and Billy are grouped up in a tree. Sadly for Udesky, things don't go his way. The raptors find him and mortally injure him. The Kirbys and Billy find him, but when they attempt to help, are ambushed by a pair of raptors. The raptors had made a trap. Smarter than primates? Smarter than primates. And to prove they're smarter than primates, they ultimately kill Udesky with a neck snap. Back with Alan, he manages to evade the raptors. Well, sort of. Cornered by the raptors, Alan would soon be saved by a mysterious figure and his gas grenades. The mystery person leads Alan to a water tanker that he's been camping at, and Alan IDs his savior to be the Kirby's son, Eric, and Eric soon IDs Alan as Alan. Alan then catches Eric up with the recent events. You know, getting kidnapped by his parents and all. While Eric treats Grant to some food and...
This is T-Rex P.
The two of them then hunker down when a swarm of compies show up. The same is applied with the Kirbys and Billy as night soon descends on the island. The next day, the two parties leave their hiding places. Alan and Eric find a boat that can aid them in escaping the island, while the Kirbys and Billy make their way to the coast, hoping to find both Grant and Eric there. Paul surmises his son would figure out that the larger, more dangerous species of dinosaurs would inhabit the interior of the island, and may have set himself closer to the coast. As the two groups continue on their separate treks, Eric hears his dad's satellite phone and runs in after it with Grant following behind. At the same time, the Kirbys hear their son calling for them and run in that same direction. After some traversing, the two groups finally find each other. The full Kirby family embrace, while Alan and Billy share a professional handshake. Just glad they're alive. But the celebration is cut short when Eric explains he followed his dad's phone ringing, even though Paul doesn't have it. It's simple, you see. Paul lent his phone to Nash, who lent the phone to the Spinosaurus. Alan and Eric make a break for it and manage to find a hole in the fence. They run through it and regroup with everyone else, but the Spinosaurus is persistent. The group then make it to some form of lookout, keeping the Spinosaurus at bay. Once inside, Billy asks for his lucky pack back from Grant. Alan insists on carrying it, but Billy soon pushes Grant a little too hard. Alan then opens the pack to see Billy has stolen 2 velociraptor eggs. This is why the raptors have been pursuing him up until this moment. Grant keeps the eggs and the group head down from the tower to another facility of sorts. After going through and checking the area out, Grant soon realizes they're in a giant birdcage. Cue the pteranodons. One of the flying reptiles takes Eric and drops him to a nest of its offspring. Meanwhile, in an attempt to redeem himself, Billy jumps with the parachute in hopes to save Eric. Eric manages to hitch a ride on Billy, while the other survivors are cornered by a pteranodon on the walkway. Things don't look good for Billy and Eric either, as a group of pteranodons on them, ripping the parachute. Meanwhile, with the others, the weight of both the survivors and the pterosaur prove too much for the old walkway, and it collapses, taking out one of the pteranodons, and forcing everyone into the water. Meanwhile, with Eric and Billy, Eric jumps while Billy gets himself stuck on a rock face. Billy manages to drop into the water, but is soon pursued by the remaining pteranodons. Paul and Alan try to save him, but Billy begs them to stay back. All Grant and Paul can do is watch as the pteranodons continue to peck Billy near death. While being pursued, the remaining survivors make it to the boat that Alan and Eric spotted earlier. They manage to get it working and continue down the river. Hey, what's with this foreshadowing? While on their jungle cruise, the group sees some of the more gentler residents of Isla Sorna, but as night descends, they soon hear a familiar sound. Paul's satellite phone. Thankfully, it found its way out of the Spinosaurus. The three adults soon go dumpster diving in dinosaur feces before finding the phone and getting approached by a Ceratosaurus, another illegally bred dinosaur that wasn't on InGen's list. But for the carnivore, the smell of the Spinosaurus dung is enough to deter it. Actually, fun fact, this was originally supposed to be a Carnotaurus, but because Disney made their own dinosaur film in 1999 that features a pair of Carnotauruses, the filmmakers of Jurassic Park 3 soon changed the animal to a Ceratosaurus. Another fun fact, one of my animation professors from college actually helped make Disney's dinosaurs, so what about that? Soon, a storm descends on the island. Grant uses the phone to try and call Ellie, but soon the group discovers the storm is the least of their worries. Grant manages to reach not Ellie, but her son, Charlie. Charlie then tries to give the phone to his mother, as instructed by Alan, before the Spinosaurus decides to say hello one last time. The Predator begins destroying the boat, even punching holes into the fuel tank, with the survivors taking refuge in the transport cage that's on the boat itself. Meanwhile, Charlie manages to give the phone to Ellie and calls Alan back. But soon, the Spinosaurus grips the cage and sends them sinking into the river. Alan manages to get the phone and pick it up. Before the line gets disconnected, Alan yells out, "In the river, Site B, the river." As the Spinosaurus plays bobbing for apples with the cage, Paul manages to escape the cage and makes his way up a crane, where he gets the Spinosaurus' attention, long enough for Eric and Amanda to make it to safety, and Grant finding a flare gun. Grant then fires the flare, which ignites the fuel from the boat, freaking the Spinosaurus out and forcing it to retreat. But as it makes its rushed escape, it tips the crane over with Paul still on it. But he survives! Yay, family! The next day, the group continue on foot towards the coast. Just before they can get to it, the same pack of raptors returns and corners them. Amanda returns the eggs because the raptors think she stole them, apparently. But while that is happening, Grant uses the resonating chamber and tries to get the raptors to retreat, but he ends up making them confused? I love this one raptor. It kind of looks like he's going, "Nani?" Soon the raptors take their eggs and retreat back into the forest. Alan and the Kirby's make it to the beach, where the opening of Lost apparently happens. A man with a megaphone asks for the survivors' names, but as he speaks, everyone freaks out because all you're asking for is trouble with a megaphone on an island full of dinosaurs. But lucky for them, they have an army. Yeah, the Marines and the Navy are sent to Isla Sorna to rescue the survivors. As they get onto the chopper, the Navy and Marines manage to find Billy alive and saved him. And Billy saved Alan's hat. Yay, hat! Anyways, the survivors are sent off to the two aircraft carriers before they see 3 pteranodons fly past them. Remember them too. And that concludes the events of Jurassic Park 3. Once the survivors return, they make mention of the illegally bred species, specifically the Spinosaurus. However, the information would be buried by bribed officials. Meanwhile, the 3 pteranodons would be captured within the borders of Vancouver, Canada, in the same year by Vic Hoskins. Hoskins would then be brought on to redevelop InGen's security division. He would be personally chosen by Masrani himself. So Hoskins and his team would apprehend the pteranodons, but what happens to them after, we don't know. But with that out of the way, the stage is set for Masrani to move in and begin his ambitious project. This is the beginning of Jurassic World itself. On April in the year 2002, The engine security team, with the help of Masrani Global, would begin their operation to reclaim Isla Nublar from the dinosaurs. A few days into the expedition, that was led by Hoskins, by the way, would run into the island's Tyrannosaur. So after a brief stare down, the security team manages to capture and secure her. It should be mentioned that the T-Rex was also in pretty poor condition. She was suffering from a disease known as maggot tooth disease. When the team first set foot on the island, the number one priority was to capture the T-Rex to ensure that the rest of the operations went smoothly. After the Rex had been secure, Timid Construction is founded by Masrani. The company's main goal was to help in the construction of Jurassic World. With the help of another company, Axis Boulder Engineering, the two companies begin planning and preparing the site itself, with the engine security team ensuring the safety of the construction workers. At this time, the island is still teeming with dinosaurs. Despite the security team capturing the T-Rex, there's still a few velociraptors, dilophosaurs, and even the herbivores should be approached with caution. Around the same time, Simon Masrani tries to quell the media frenzy, as a lot of people suspect, of the Jurassic World project. Soon it will become public knowledge. Speculation was running wild when the company set foot on the island. Now, around 2003, something a bit strange happened. Henry Wu would abandon something on Isla Sorna, something that he would refer to as an accident. It's not exactly known what it is. You might find out in Dominion. I honestly don't know. Coincidentally, around this time, Dr. Wu was researching the cause of the cloned dinosaurs being featherless and chalks it up to null alleles. Null allele is described as a non-functioning allele, a variety of gene caused by genetic mutations. Such mutations can cause a complete lack of production of an associated gene product or a product that does not function properly. In either case, the allele may be considered non-functional, and Dr. Wu believes this is caused due to the cloned dinosaurs having genes of other animals spliced into them. And this practice would remain from Jurassic Park to Jurassic World, which is why we remain to see feathered dinosaurs in the park. Later in the year, the UHCS would lighten the restrictions provided by the Gene Guard Act at the request of a Masrani official. The reason the official gave was, and I quote, "the reasons for medical advancement." That's a weird way of spelling amusement park. After this, and I can't confirm this because the novel makes a light mention of it, but to promote/advertise the coming park, Masrani would send 3 crates to random people all around the world. This would range from farmers to movie stars to lead scientists and so on. Eventually a farmer's son managed to figure the crates out, and the end result would be a hologram with the following message: "They're coming, May 30th, 2005. And this will take us into the events of the prequel novel, The Evolution of Claire. Before the opening of Jurassic World, we meet up with a 19-year-old Claire Deering who's currently in the process of packing her things from her dorm room. Helping her is her roommate, Regina. Now, Claire in this book is a lot different from her future self in a decade. She's more tough and more into animal conservation. She even has a pet named Sally. Can you guess what Sally is based on what you know of Claire in the first 2 movies? She's a blue-tongued skink. Honestly, I didn't see that coming too. While the two are packing, their respective families come to help them finish. Regina's parents make an appearance while Claire is greeted by her sister, Karen, who by this time is married and already has her kids, Zach and Gray. And the way Claire describes Karen, I can't help but think of Karen Nelson from the new Halloween movies because they sound like the same character. You know, tough and living in rural areas close to the forest and whatnot. And given the fact that both characters are named Karen, and they're both played by the same actor, Judy Greer, so I guess the new headcanon is Halloween is part of the Jurassic universe. Anyway, Karen helps Claire pack her things in the family truck, including Sally. After exchanging gifts with Regina and a heartfelt goodbye, both Karen and Claire head off to their parents' house. Now, it should be mentioned that Claire is... there's a little bit of that DNA from the first movie, where she's quite distant with her family. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do to get that GPA, am I right? Claire and Karen continue down the highway, catching up on what they've been up to. Claire talks a bit about her campus life, and Karen shares a bit about her kids. Also, how their parents are having trouble. I swear to God, every Jurassic property has someone's parents being in some kind of discourse. What the fuck, Jurassic Park? As the two sisters continue on their 3-hour drive, they converse more. Claire reveals she's still waiting on the last internship she applied for before choosing from her options. She reveals that the last internship she applied for is with the Maserati Corporation. With the deadline tomorrow, she thinks she wasn't accepted. Anyway, Karen suggests that Claire does this little wish ritual that their father does. Simply write what you want on a napkin and then burn it, and maybe it will come true, I don't know. As the ride continues, Claire thinks back on her life a bit, really thinking about if she were to be accepted into the Maserati internship, which by the way goes by the name of Bright Minds. And here's some cool continuity I noticed about her thinking. So she mentions how inspiring John Hammond's genetic work was, and how she mentions the first images of a live dinosaur that were shown to her was when she was 12 years old. Claire, in the time of 2005, was 19, so working back means she probably saw the images around 1998, which was coincidentally a few months before 1998, T-Rex rampaged through San Diego. A few months before 1998, the Rex rampaging through San Diego would have made headlines. I really like when supplementary materials go this far to keep things in line with the continuity. Like, great job. Anywho, Claire goes ahead and writes down both Bright Minds and for her mom and dad to find her again. Another hour on the road, and the pair stop at a rest stop, and they do the wish game. Karen uses the lighter in their dad's truck to light the napkin ablaze. But as this happens, Karen kind of, implies that something's amiss, because just before Karen left the house to pick up Claire from her dorm room, an envelope made it to their parents' house. Karen hands the envelope to Claire, and thus Claire is accepted to the Maserati Corporation's internship, Bright Minds. So we fast forward a bit. Before Claire leaves for Isla Nublar, her and her sister go shopping just to get some essentials, because apparently before she can go to Nublar, she needs to have, the right kind of sunscreen, the right kind of clothing, because tropical environment, gotta wear them khakis, I guess. And her sister kind of overcompensates to the point where she even buys Claire bear spray, because you never know with dinosaurs, am I right? And as I mentioned before, she has to get her immunizations for tropical diseases like malaria, yellow fever, or dengue. And let's fast forward to the day that Claire goes to the island. Claire and her father drive for 4 hours on the road before they finally reach the airport. And I kind of want to make this note. Claire's dad gives some words of wisdom like, I want you to keep water on you, a knife. Not exactly things you should say at an airport, my dude. Claire then assures him that it's a park, will remember the teachings from Girl Scouts and camping. But yeah, anyway, Claire boards the plane and is met by a man named Justin. The two of them strike up a conversation about the 1800s bone wars between Cope and Nash. This is an actual thing that happened, look it up. I should probably mention the conversation was spurred because Claire brought some reading materials and they involve the bone wars, so yeah. The two of them strike up a conversation before they doze off during the flight. Next thing you know it, they're in Costa Rica. Once there, Claire and Justin split up. Claire meets up with a Maserati assistant before she meets up with Justin again, who apparently is another intern at Bright Minds. They go into an unmarked black van. Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. Anyways, as the trip continues, the assistant kind of dodges some questions about the island, like when the two interns ask, how many dinosaur species are there? And she only lists the herbivores, even though we know that there are probably 3 to 4 carnivores on the island, Tylosaurus not included. Once in the van, Claire and Justin are met with 2 other interns, a brother-sister duo, Tanya and Eric, last names not included. Tanya and Eric continue to talk about their own lives and mention that they have actually a 3rd sibling, a younger sister named Victory. Remember her for later, oh boy. Anyway, in the van, Tanya and Eric reveal their professions being Tanya's into botany, so she's into plants pretty much. And she kind of goes on and on about the genetically engineered plants that Jurassic World made for the herbivores to eat, while Eric's more into media, so AV Club, videos, all that. And also Justin reveals that he's into business. Anyway, the four of them make it onto the ferry, where they realize that this ferry isn't only transporting interns, but it's also transporting other park staff, such as scientists, trainers, security guards, and even some equipment such as jeeps. Claire even manages to overhear a scientist talking about how certain dinosaurs like specific music, like apparently Triceratops like jazz. Anyway, Claire and Justin meet up at a table with Tanya and Eric, with two other faces, Ronnie and Wyatt. Anyway, Wyatt isn't exactly what's the word I'm looking for? The most progressive guy, I guess? So after Wyatt establishes himself as the ass in this story, while on the boat, the overseer of the internship mentions that this internship is the very first for Jurassic World. Keep that in mind. The ferry makes it to Isla Nublar as night descends. Anyway, once they make it onto the island, the total of 12 interns are then placed into 4 separate jeeps that take them to the main hotel. The interns are given a packet which provides them with most of the info that they need to both navigate and to avoid certain obstacles in the park. They are provided with the latest tablets, a map of the island, and facilities, along with the name of each intern's roommate. Claire is paired with Tanya, while Tanya's brother Eric is roomed with Wyatt. Anyway, once they're in their rooms, they call it a night before the next morning. From Claire's description, the view from her balcony gives her a perfect view of Main Street. Anyway, once the interns go down for breakfast, they are met with Simon Masrani, who gives them a speech, saying how he knows the best when he sees it, how he picks the best, and how everyone in the room is the worst. No, I'm just joking, they're the best, okay. Anyway, the interns talk to Simon Masrani, who, in this, he's actually a really cool guy. Like, he memorized all 12 interns by name. Man, I wish I had that. Anyway, as he converses with the interns, he talks about how he allows certain information to get leaked out of Jurassic World because he likes to gossip and it kind of develops hype for the park. Anyway, Masrani and the interns go to an enclosure which will soon become Gyrosphere Valley. There they witness the introduction of one of the younger Triceratops with the senior herds there. And of course, when they try to leave, it's kind of hard to pry the interns away since this is technically, for most of them, the very first dinosaur that they've seen. Anyway, the introduction of the younger animal goes on without a hitch. Once the young animal has been introduced, everyone leaves and heads to the Innovation Center. Masrani takes them all down in an elevator, which leads them to the main genetic labs, where they're met with Dr. Wu. Wu is quite hesitant of having the interns there, mainly because he doesn't want them to break anything, which is, yeah, understandable. Also, given the fact that he was given a fairly impressive amber specimen with possible multiple genomes in it. With a lot of reluctance, Dr. Wu allows the interns into the lab. As he leads them through, Masrani and Wu kind of have a little bit of tug-of-war amongst themselves. It's essentially Wu doing the Rogue One meme, you know, we stand here amidst my achievements, not yours, and Masrani pretty much goes, yeah, but I did buy everything. Wu continues revealing some info to the interns, like how they're constantly looking for species, how they perfected the extraction process since Jurassic Park, and they even have a list of species that they want to find, one of them being the baryonyx. Dr. Wu then presents a question. Why do they splice DNA from other animals into the dinosaurs? And everyone has a different answer. Justin says to make the clones look as close to the actual animals as possible. He even brings up how some dinosaurs had feathers, but again, no. Tanya answers to adapt into the new environment since the climate now is so much different, especially given, you know, global warming. Ronnie's answer mainly involves security, that the animals need to be genetically sound to a life of scientists, vets, trainers, and of course the guests. And then Claire brings up an important point, how genetically altering the animals will prevent the original mistakes from the first park. that being the animals being able to change sex, but goes deeper into the subject, suggesting the animals can evolve new adaptations. Man, more foreshadowing. After that, the scientists that the interns are observing then begin drilling into the amber specimen. But as that's happening, Claire overhears Wu and Masrani. Wu has interest in Tanya and Claire to have a hand in the lab, but Claire overhears something else. Something that's quite concerning, as he mentions these 12 interns are probably going to be better than the first batch. What? Which is weird, because isn't this group supposed to be the first group of interns? Before Claire has the chance to question Wu about the first batch thing, the scientists manage to extract the DNA from the first mosquito in the amber sample, so Dr. Wu urges everyone to leave. Once outside the Innovation Center, everyone pretty much goes where they want to go. Tanya, Eric, Claire, and Justin decide to check out the public greenhouse. Once there, and alone with Justin, Claire raises her suspicions on what Wu said in the lab about the, and I quote, the train wreck first batch. But before she can continue, Wyatt, who's also in the greenhouse, Jesus Christ, Wyatt overhears the conversation and joins in, before he starts talking about rumors surrounding Jurassic World, and the existence of a possible phantom intern program before Bright Minds. Wyatt then tells the tale how the first group of interns helped move some brachiosaurs from Sorna to Nublar, but shortly after that, a devastating storm hit the island and apparently fried the main electrical circuit. Due to the mounting situation, an evacuation was issued. However, in the panic, apparently one of the interns was left behind and seemingly died in the storm. Justin then brings up if this did happen, then Jurassic World would have been closed. And my guy, that's kind of the point. This leads into Wyatt ranting about the possible conspiracy and how the first park handled a similar situation with the deaths of Ray Arnold, Muldoon, and Gennaro. And soon, Claire and Justin kind of lose interest in the conversation because, Wyatt's kind of Alex Jonesing it a bit. Anyway, the day continues, it ends, and Claire decides to clock out. As she preps to put down some notes, she spills some pens onto the floor. One of the pens disappearing under her bed. As she tries to retrieve it, she ends up finding a notebook. At first she believes that this notebook might belong to her roommate, Tanya, but finds the initials IZ. So, not Tanya's then. Claire then proceeds to read the notebook, but doesn't get too far as she dozes off. When she's awakened by Tanya, it's already morning. Anyway, today's itinerary is her, Tanya, and the other 12 interns are going back to Gyrosphere Valley to check up on the young Triceratops. It's nothing to be concerned about. However, the Triceratops tracker shows that the animal hasn't moved in a couple of hours. So, yeah, there's room for concern there. Once they are at the gates, they're met up with the ACU, the trainers from the other day, and they proceed into the enclosure on foot. As they make their way through, they realize that the Triceratops might actually be in serious danger, and in danger it is. They manage to find her in a gully, and it's badly injured. As they investigate, they find a large gash on her side, along with a crooked tail. It's possible the gash was caused by a plant that the animal was unfamiliar with, and in a panic, jumped into the gully by accident. In a collective panic, the ACU, trainers, and vets on site decide to disperse to get what they need, the ACU setting up a perimeter while the vets get the equipment they need to aid the animal, leaving the interns to guard the animal with nothing but a walkie-talkie and a stun stick. Soon Claire notices a thick branch with large thorns is embedded into the wound of the animal, and its staying there is making things worse. The more the animal thrashes, the deeper and larger the gash gets. In the moment, Claire then remembers what the scientist said on the ferry, how the Triceratops like jazz music, so she asks Tanya to sing some jazz music with the other interns, while she, Justin, and Ronnie try to get the branch out of the Triceratops. They manage to do so, but not without getting the attention of one of the ACU members, Oscar. By the way, you should probably remember Oscar. He might show up later, I don't know, but we'll see. Oscar grills Claire, but the interns have her back, saying that the branch was making the situation a little worse and that they took the necessary action they had to. Anyways, the rest of the park workers then descend on the Triceratops. They treat its wound with a revolutionary new fusion bandage, which we'll talk about later, and they manage to get the animal out of the gully. And despite the stunt that was pulled off, No one gets kicked off the island. The novel then skips ahead 2 weeks later, and the interns have adjusted to their work environment. Claire has it down to memorizing routes and IDing dinosaurs, not just by species, but by individuals. Basically, she could tell which animals which by the size, scar, behaviors, and other characteristics. All thanks to Izzy. So things are going normally, but something weird happens. While she was cataloging some supplies in a supply shed, Wyatt decides to make Claire's job a little more difficult, so he trips a box of tranks, spilling them on the floor, forcing Claire to recount them. As she counts the tranks alone, something catches her attention. She's not alone in the shed, or at least she thinks. As she investigates, she finds the fridge door to be slightly open. She investigates some more and checks outside before another noise, the sound of metal clanging, spooks her back inside the shed. Once inside, one of the park workers surprise her, asking Claire why she's still here and that she missed dinner. Claire then explains the mishap with the trank box, but doesn't bring up what she heard in the shed. Soon the two are joined by another park worker, and then the mood starts to turn. The two interlopers say they'll finish up Claire's work and that she should head back to the hotel. Adding to the weirdness and uneasiness to the situation, Claire complies and gets into her respective Jeep. As she's driving back, however, her intuition proves correct as something rushes past the road, slamming the brakes and forcing the car to do a complete 180. She takes a quick glance at her surroundings, trying to see what ran past her, but can't find anything. All she knew, it was big, about human size, so she quickly makes her way back to the hotel. Once she's back, she decides to read more in Izzy's journal. From the next 2 entries, she finds out that 2 brachiosaurs had suffered from some kind of infection, and how Izzy told the head vets, but made her confront someone named Savannah. Apparently, the infection on the brachiosaurs got so bad, they had to put them under surgery. However, after they did the surgery on the first brachiosaur, which went off without a hitch, although granted it was like a little touch and go at times, a second brachiosaur started getting a similar infection. However, it should be stated she knows that the animals are alright because she's already seen them earlier. Anyway, the next day, Claire and Justin decide to go to Gyrosphere Valley where they help the security team map out the valley itself. Leading the team is Oscar, who's a little hesitant to have Claire on board, but allows it anyway. He doesn't really trust her after the whole Triceratops incident, so he's like keeping his guard up. Anyway, as they continue through the valley, Claire and Justin break off from the main security group. However, they get their gyrosphere stuck on something, and when they try to unlodge it, a young brachiosaurus named Pearl investigates. By this time, they have exited the gyrosphere. However, the young brachiosaurus views the gyrosphere as a toy, and then starts playing with it. Justin and Claire manage to escape the chaos, but then soon Oscar comes in, and he's like, well, guess we're putting you in solitary confinement, Pearl. Anyway, Claire doesn't want Pearl to be put in solitary confinement, so Claire and Justin go and find the head trainer, Birdie. They tell her about the situation, and she suggests that they brainstorm a possible solution. Justin then commits some public vandalism by writing on some wet cement. He writes Pearl was here, before making a sauropod-like footprint and pressing both Claire and his hands on the cement as well. And then Justin blurts out his confession to Claire. Anyway, after he confesses, Claire does the same. Why am I talking about this? And I'm just gonna skip a lot of this, mainly because it's not too eventful. But to summarize, Claire and the other interns come up with a possible solution for the whole Brachiosaurus fiasco. Like making Easter egg gyrospheres. There was a situation where some of the interns were at a waterfall and Claire could have sworn she saw something in the forest, like an animal, but apparently that leads nowhere. I'm just going to say that now. Also during this time, Wu would have Claire and Tanya observe some pterosaur eggs while they're incubating, but they have to inject the eggs with steroids and antibiotics before the animals can hatch. This is mainly connected to the mysterious Brachiosaurus infection to try and prevent it in other species. So we'll catch up with the weekly dinner that the park sets up, and the group sits with Bertie proposing their Brachiosaurus Easter egg gyrosphere idea. And Bertie acknowledges it and will suggest it. However, as Bertie leaves, Claire stops her outside the dining hall and asks about Izzy. Bertie draws a blank though and confirms Wyatt's story by mentioning a storm that hit the island, thus Bertie wasn't able to be on Nublar during that time. She then suggests Claire ask Tim since he was actually on site during that time. Coincidentally enough, he's walking to the hall. Claire stops him and asks about Izzy, and then his expression drops. Realizing this, Claire pushes a bit, but Tim tries to deny there being anyone by that name. He then presents his own questions to Claire on how she even knows an Izzy. Claire then lies, saying she thought a friend of her sister's might have worked here earlier by the same name. With that sorted, Claire leaves, but Tim seems suspicious of her now. The next day, Claire and Tanya make their way to Wu's lab again to monitor the eggs, but before they can step off the elevator, a woman is waiting for Claire. Once she figures out who out of the two interns is Claire, the woman then tells Tanya that Claire will be off for the day, and will meet with Sarah, the head of Bright Minds. They then head up, with Claire being led to Sarah's office. The exchange between the two is cryptic, but the point is made clear, with Sarah really leaning in near the end of their talk. It's nothing malicious, but the undertone Sarah gives off, like she'd go, "Yeah, Masrani, he's a pretty powerful guy. Be ashamed if someone says something to jeopardize his operations." After the talk, Claire then heads back down to the main foyer, where she finds Wyatt. Knowing that Wyatt might know something about these ghost interns, Claire then switches on her tablet to record. She then confronts Wyatt about the ghost interns. He tries to brush it off, but then starts to suspect Claire might know something. So in the same foyer, they sit down and talk. The two of them agree to exchange information on the subject of the ghost interns. Wyatt starts off when he discovered a list of names that was on his father's desk. It should be mentioned that Wyatt's father and Masrani are actually close partners, and that Wyatt's father is actually helping Masrani a lot when it comes to the finalization of Jurassic World. Anyway, when he asked his father about the names, his dad just acted agitated, so when his dad went on a business trip, Wyatt broke into his dad's office and took pictures of the list of names. He then reached out to said names, and they all said the same thing. "I was never on Nublar during the time. I was actually working at insert company here." They all worked for a variety of different companies, but as Wyatt did a little more digging, he found out that those companies were actually under the Masrani umbrella. After that, Wyatt then asks for Claire's information, but then Claire pulls a 180 and threatens Wyatt to share the list, otherwise she'll share the recording of them having this conversation. Wyatt, clearly outsmarted and is looking quite spiteful, then simmers down because Masrani and Wu exit from the labs. The four of them then converse with each other, with Wu wondering why Claire wasn't at the labs today, but is understanding when she said she had to go to Sarah's office. The two elders then tell the interns about how a new batch of animals are coming in from Sorna, and reveals they are a group of velociraptors. Oh yeah, it's smarter than primates times. Masrani then explains the acclimation process for the raptors, which is understandable since these animals are the feral breeds, not the soon-to-be-made Ibris breeds. After that, Masrani drives off with Wyatt, and then Claire is picked up with Bertie, who's needing help with something. And on the drive where they need to go, Bertie reveals that Claire's gonna help her feed the T-Rex. After the day, Claire then heads back to her hotel room. But before she enters her room, she hears two voices. She doesn't make out what they're trying to say, but then when she enters, it's both Tanya and Eric. When she enters, Eric just suddenly slaps his laptop real quick. Eric says it's only footage he cut up together and was just showing Tanya, but I don't buy that heaping load of bullshit. Anyways, Claire heads into the shower before Tanya asks if Claire is wearing a goat, which technically, yes. After her shower, Claire then quickly turns on her tablet and checks the names that Wyatt sent her, looking for anyone that can be tied to IZ, and she does. Isabel James. But like looking up any name on the internet, she's given multiple hits. So Claire then specifies her search, adding IZ's major, the college she went to, some personal information that she managed to get from the notebook. The hope is she can find IZ on the internet, and you know what they say, be careful what you wish for, cause you just might get it. Because after Claire puts down the specifics of IZ with Isabel James's name, she ends up finding Isabel James's obituary. The obituary says the following. Isabel James, age 19, passed away Sunday morning at the home of her parents. a promising student at Yale and a member of the Yale chapter of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. She is survived by her loving family, her parents, Bill, Kathy, and her brother, Donnelly. There will be a private, closed service, and the family asks for donations to the Mighty Girl Initiative in lieu of flowers. After reading this, Claire then cross-references some dates jotted down on the notebook. She compares the dates in the notebook to the dates in the obituary and some weather reports around the time, and everything Wyatt said in the greenhouse is looking less like rumor and more like fact. Claire then tracks back through Isabel's notebook and finds an entry written on the 1st of March, 3 days before Isabel supposedly died. And the entry reads, "Did some work in Sector C. I'm still not sure what I'm looking for, but I had to dodge Oscar and his cronies. They're test driving those sphere things all over the valley and would have freaked if they knew I snuck in. I got what I needed and snuck out undetected though. I'll start testing tomorrow. I know it's a long shot, but what else am I supposed to do? What if they keep getting sick?" Claire then goes through the rest of Izzy's notebook before noticing something about the last 20 pages. She peels it back and finds a scrap of paper with a message on it that wasn't written by Isabel, and it simply reads, "Watch your back." There's also a list of plant names. It shows plant species, and beside them is ACAK, and some of these plants have an X at the end. Claire would find a map in Izzy's notebook and cross-references the ACAKs with the X's with the ACAKs on the map. However, as she reviews the list and the map itself, she finds one plant with 2 X's behind it instead of the 1. And that plant is located, apparently, behind a waterfall in Gyrosphere Valley. But before Claire can dig any deeper, Justin knocks at her door, spooking her. The next day, Claire then asks Eric about the SD card that Claire found at the waterfall. However, Eric says no data can be extracted because the card is damaged. Even if Claire didn't step on it, the moisture of the jungle alone probably made short work of the internal workings of the card. Anyway, after that, the interns present the Easter gyrospheres to the young Brachiosaurus, and the young Brachiosaurus likes it, so thus the young Brachiosaurus doesn't need to go into solitary confinement. So after they deliver the painted gyrospheres to the Brachiosaurus, Claire invites Justin for a mission to obtain the plant sample that's behind the waterfall in Gyrosphere Valley. Claire isn't still trusting of Justin, but she still invites him on the mission. And Claire's plan to get into the valley is as follows. There's a small window of time between the security team switching shifts, which occasionally lines up with the time that all the trainers and feeders leave for the day. Using the small window of time, Claire and Justin would walk on in, saying they're conducting a night vision test for one of the gyrospheres for the security team. Once they find and extract the plant from the waterfalls, they'll exit the valley using the code that Bertie gave the interns earlier. While they were doing the whole Brachiosaurus gyrosphere exchange, Bertie gave the interns an emergency code that they could use to exit Gyrosphere Valley. However, they can't use that same code to get in. And basically the plan goes off without a hitch. Claire then heads in and finds the plant, more specifically an algae that's been growing behind the waterfall on some rocks. While there, Claire does a quick experiment trying to measure the pH of the algae using distilled water and vinegar, but then has a very violent reaction. And it's enough to surprise both Claire and Justin. Before it gets too dark, Claire and Justin make it out of the valley and return the gyrosphere before heading back to their hotel. At this point, Claire really wants to tell Justin about Izzy because he himself is getting a little curious about Claire's doings, but all Claire can do at the moment is promise him he'll know eventually. A few days go by, and Claire continues visiting Dr. Wu in the lab. She wants to tell him about the algae, but can't find a way to tell him without him, suspecting Claire knowing more than she's letting on. After the 3rd day, Claire then has a video call with Karen, and she kind of cryptically tells her what's been going on, just like, found a conspiracy, and there's this guy I really like, and I should tell him, right? Or shouldn't I? What should I do? Now, at this point, Claire didn't share anything about Izzy or the notebook, or talked more about the ghost interns with everyone else, even though she heavily suspects it to be true. But it's come to the point where she does need outside help. Later that same night, the staff decides to play a movie for everyone, including the interns. However, there is an ulterior motive to this screening. It's to keep everyone inside while the velociraptors from Sorna are being transported. But before the film starts, Claire asks Justin if they can talk. She takes him back to her room and unloads everything. The notebook, the algae testing, mentioning Isabel, and Wyatt's conspiracy being true. All of it. At first, Justin is taken aback a bit, but agrees with Claire. The company covering up a death isn't right, and the two hatch a plan to obtain more info. How do they do that? By breaking into Wyatt's and Eric's room. In there, they hope to find some info or anything connected to Isabel, but they find more than what they bargained for. They find schematics of security fences and paddocks, hazy photos of certain people and locations on the island, power box locations. There's even stuff in the toilet, a waterproof bag filled with SD cards like the one Claire found earlier near the waterfall. Claire and Justin even find stolen goods, but not complimentary stuff like from hotels, like towels or shampoos. We're talking about a tranq dart and some fusion bandage mixture. The two immediately suspect Wyatt might be up to something, stealing and selling certain goods Jurassic World procured. But then it becomes a sudden realization. What if he's not just selling this stuff to a buyer, but instead using it in preparation to steal a dinosaur? With this in mind, they quickly leave the room with some of the things they found. They sneak back into the conference room where they're playing the film, and asks an intern if Wyatt is still here. He is not. Apparently, he complained about a headache and went to his room to rest, which is kinda weird, since Claire and Justin just came from his room. They sneak past the interns and through the kitchen, where one of the chefs reveal someone else snuck through the kitchen not too long ago. With this in mind, they head to the Jeep and try to figure out where Masrani is. They'd figured he'd be with the transport team, moving the Velociraptor to the quarantine paddock. They hope to find Masrani and tell him of everything that they found in Wyatt's room. So they head to the paddock, but when they arrive, the area seems barren and empty. They bounce ideas off each other, trying to figure out where Masrani might be. They suspect that this transport might still be happening, and that all the teams, along with Masrani, are still at the docks. However, before they can turn back to their Jeep, the lights suddenly flicker on before cutting out suddenly. And then, the duo can smell what seems to be smoke. They would make their way to the fire and put it out. Smoke, however, is still incredibly thick. While they're sifting through the smoke, they end up in the middle of the paddock, with the holding enclosure still locked. But through the smoke, the duo sees someone moving through. Thanks to some cloud cover moving away from the moon, the area becomes a little more visible, allowing the duo to identify the person, or should I say, people. And it's not Wyatt as suspected, but rather the twins, Eric and Tanya. Justin, absolutely shocked as to what he's seeing, yells out, "What the hell are you guys doing?" The sudden surprise makes Aaron slip his fingers and cut a wire. Huge mistake. Because in doing that, all the holding enclosures open and something steps out of one of them. It's the raptor. Before anyone can say anything, they run to the open paddock gate. But before Claire runs with the other interns, she makes a dash with the emergency lock button. She makes a dash, presses it, and runs out with everyone else as the raptor is hot on her tail. Thankfully, the gate closes. Not so much in time, but just snagging the raptor's tail, pinning it for the moment. The interns then decide to run into the jungle of the paddock before coming up with a plan to climb on one of the trees and jumping over the fence using that. It should also be noted that Claire and Justin at this moment are really mad at the twins. They search as they run because who knows how long that raptor will stay pinned. Luckily for the group, they manage to find their unicorn of a tree, despite the landscapers trying to keep as much foliage clear from the walls. Tanya and Eric manage to get over, but when Claire and Justin try climbing the tree, Tanya yells to Claire her left. Claire then ducks to the right, tumbling down an embankment. After the fall, she hides between two trees that provide her with some form of cover from the raptor, who manages to track her down but can't get to her. Justin then comes in to distract the raptor. Claire and Justin run in the same direction with the raptor right behind them. Eventually they lose her, and Claire knows they need to arm themselves. Thank God these paddocks have tranq equipment for use. Claire and Justin continue to run through the forest before finding what they're looking for, the cache of ACU equipment. But before they can get to it, the raptor shows up, testing the walls. Justin and Claire keep out of sight before Justin then decides to distract the raptor while Claire can arm herself. He leaves their hiding spot, yells at the animal, then runs into the forest. Claire gets to the cache and arms herself with a tranq rifle and a stun baton. As she enters the forested area trying to find Justin, that's where she finds streaks of blood on the floor. She continues before just missing the raptor. After the animal goes her own way, Claire follows the blood trail before something crunches under her foot. Glasses. Not sure if I mentioned this, but Justin wears glasses. Before she can continue though, the raptor surprises her and gets Claire on the ground. She tries the rifle, but the tranq dart inside is shattered. She tries to stun her, but it's just out of reach. Claire then manages to get back from the raptor, but now Claire is pinned against a tree. But not before something falls out of her pocket. The bear spray Karen made Claire buy. Claire quickly uses it on the raptor, and while it withers in pain, Claire grabs the stunner and knocks the raptor out. It's not long after that Claire finds Justin, but it isn't looking good, Chief. They talk to each other, Claire ensuring Justin everything will be fine, while Justin talks back a bit before he passes away. It won't be until hours after before Oscar and his security team locate Claire and Justin. Masrani is there too, and everyone evacs the area. Getting Claire cared for by doctors, she mentions to Masrani about Eric and Tanya, but Masrani simply responds with, "I know." He then ensures Claire that everything will be fine. Claire is then taken back to the hotel, where one of the park workers lead her to her room, but two of the interns, Amanda and Ronnie, are there waiting for Claire. They take her into her room and help her out in this trying time. 2 days pass since the incident, and Masrani calls Claire up to his office. Once there, they converse. Complete transparency on Masrani's side, but Claire is more subdued. She then asks about Justin, whose body is currently making its way back to Portland so his mom can bury her son. Masrani then asks if Claire is willing to talk to the twins, mainly because the twins refuse to cooperate unless it's Claire. Claire accepts and is sent to an interrogation room where Tanya is waiting. From there, Tanya tells everything. Both Tanya and Eric were sent in by a pharmaceutical company called Mosby Health. Oh yay! Another rival corporation. Tanya says her little sister Victory is suffering from a heart disease that the corporation is able to help with, but only if they spy, steal supplies, and information from Jurassic World. Tanya also reveals that it was her in the supply shop that night when Claire was alone. After all is said and done, Claire really starts digging into Tanya with the death of Justin, where Masrani thanks Claire, and then someone drives her back to the hotel. Once Claire enters her room, she finds it half empty. Everything that belonged to Tanya has been cleared out. Still shaken from her experiences, she ends up calling Karen and unloads everything on her. Where Karen simply asks for Claire to come home. After the video call, Claire can't stand staying in the room anymore, so she sneaks out, but instead of going through the front door, because if Claire is spotted by the security guards, they'll follow her around. So to avoid that, she ends up sneaking to the back. And where is she going, you might ask? She's visiting Dr. Wu in his lab. She then shows him the algae that she and Justin discovered. Wu, without hesitation or questioning Claire, takes her and another scientist to a private office, where they conduct a similar experiment to the algae and confirms Claire's suspicions. It's incredibly acidic. Dr. Wu then surmises that the highly acidic algae might be a byproduct of the chemicals they use in the water to improve the dinosaurs' health. It's more of a multivitamin that improves their bones and teeth. Claire then returns to her hotel, but then leaves again, and this time allowing the security guard to follow her. Claire drives herself to one of the lookouts near Gyrosphere Valley, and soon she is joined by Masrani himself, where he reveals the fallout of the situation. Tanya and Eric are still being held on the island and probably will be taken to the proper authorities. The FDA will probably retract all funding from Mosby Health, and that's probably the tip of the iceberg in terms of consequences for that company. The medical trials that the twins' younger sister is part of will stop, thus making her succumb to her heart disease. And the raptor that ended up attacking Justin was euthanized not long after the incident. To prevent any more catastrophe from this event, Claire starts making requests and Masrani obliges. The twins are not to have a public outing to avoid a scandal. The treatment trials for Victory are to continue and her education is to be paid as well. After that, Claire then reveals the cause of the herbivore's throat infection and how it's caused by the algae. She then unloads everything, even mentioning that she's not the one who discovered the algae, but rather Isabel. From there, Claire then demands Masrani to tell her what really happened, what happened to Isabel, and the events of that day go like this. When the storm hit the island, it caused a massive power outage, but one of the power breakers caused a fire, and the fire happened to be near a recovery ward where one of the sick brachiosaurs were held. Isabel, not wanting the animal to die, went back to free the recovering dinosaur. Masrani on the boat held out as long as he can, but Isabel never returned. So before the storm can get any worse, the boat's captain had to evacuate. Once they returned to the island, they found Isabel's Jeep. She crashed it and died on impact. Now, the reason why they covered up the death was simply the park wasn't prepared for something like this to happen. If they had to tell the truth that she died on the island and not in her home, like her obituary stated, a massive investigation would take place on the island, halting everything. Construction, asset creation, and the investigation might inhibit the care of the animals themselves. So they covered the incident up and made the necessary preparations for possible future events before the park opens. Masrani then offers Claire a job, but if she so wishes, Masrani has a private jet that can take her home. But Claire does not answer at the time. Spoiler alert, she ends up working for Masrani Global. She ends up working at Jurassic World. Before the year's end, construction of Jurassic World would be complete, and thus closing the book on the evolution of Claire. On May 30th, 2005, Jurassic World will open to the public for the first time and will receive 98,120 visitors in its first month. Within the same year, both Masrani and InGen would sign an agreement with the Costa Rican Environment Protection Society to formally protect the indigenous wildlife of Isla Nublar. And after Jurassic World opened, Claire Deering would be promoted to Senior Asset Manager for the park. Later on, InGen would begin construction on a Siberian research base, possibly made in hopes of obtaining Cenozoic DNA samples. While these different divisions and companies invest and experiment on dinosaurs, some of which will have significant importance in future stories, but we'll cover those when we get there, Dr. Wu would begin his own experiments, now infamously known as E750. The E750 project would be a secret to both Masrani, the company itself, Masrani Global, and InGen. The research would find moderate success in their initial findings. However, the E750 project would yield unseemly side effects, and due to that, an event would occur involving the project. The event would leave several people injured or poisoned, including Dr. Wu himself. Luckily, no one was killed in the incident. However, upon finding the event out and review the E750 project as a whole, Masrani would demand the termination of the project and its findings. However, Dr. Wu, like his predecessor, Dr. Sorkin, would keep the E750 project on ice, both figuratively and very much literally. While the initial results of the E750 project were dubbed as a failure, the research itself would gain the interest of the board of directors in both Masrani Global and InGen. So, on April 4th, 2012, Simon Masrani would give Dr. Wu full reign to create a brand new species. Using his research on E750, it would now go into a new project. This would lead to the creation of the Indominus Rex. And not too long after that, the first viable embryos would be gestated and hatched within the same year. Later in 2012, a new project overseen by InGen Security Division Commander Vic Hoskins would begin, Project Iberus, or the Integrated Behavioral Raptor Intelligence Study. This study was made to test the possibility of training raptors for public attractions. Vic Hoskins would see this as an opportunity to test if the raptors would be trained and used for potential bioweapons. The project would bring on Owen Grady to oversee and care for the animals in the test. The 4 raptors, the Blue, Echo, Charlie, and Delta, would be cloned before the end of 2012. Owen would request to Hoskins that he'd hire his close friend and colleague Barry Sembin. Throughout the study, the 4 raptors are housed in the Raptor Research Arena away from guests. As the research continued, Owen would find Blue out of the 4 raptors to be the more sympathetic individual, while the others tried to kill him, stating that Blue is hyper-intelligent, smarter than primates, and capable of cognitive bonding. By November of 2014, the Indian Siberian Research Facility is complete. The objective of the facility is to obtain biological material from Cenozoic creatures in the permafrost, to possibly bring Ice Age megafauna to the park. By 2015, Jurassic World has grown considerably. From the initial 8 or so species they had, has now grown to over 20. In the first month of 2015, Masrani would reveal on his blog that InGen would be receiving a boost in funding around $225 million over the course of 3 years. That money will be going into InGen's Security Operations Division. He also teases the reveal of an upcoming new attraction, this being the Indominus Rex. Though he never states it by name, he shares this teaser poster actually. Later in March, Masrani Oil and InGen would have a meeting regarding Masrani Oil possibly helping InGen expand its genetic library, because around this time, Masrani Oil would find a carbon iron-rich organic structure with potential genetic data ranging between the Cretaceous to the mid-Miocene period. Dr. Wu would also write a scientific journal around this time, stating the possible use of InGen's genomic library and how it could assist Medixil Health in the company's disease research. Medixil Health is a company that was founded back in 2003. Going back to the Indominus equipment, May would be the intended time for the Indominus enclosure to be completed. However, this date, along with its showcase date of July 2015, would be pushed back due to the animal's aggressive nature and surprising spike in growth. And before the events of December 2015, Zia Rodriguez would begin her training to become a pre-veterinarian for Jurassic World. Around the same time, Franklin Webb would join the Jurassic World team as an IT technician. And this will bring us to the main events of Jurassic World and Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. A couple of months before the Jurassic World incident, Darius Bowman, a young dinosaur aficionado, would be the first person to beat the game Jurassic World VR. Create a name. By beating the game, Darius would win both a free trip to Jurassic World and to take part in the test group for the park's new camping facility called Camp Cretaceous. December rolls around and Darius is joined by 5 other campers. They are Brooklyn, a famous vlogger which helped her get early access to the camp, best character Ben Pincus, who got him because his mother works close with the Masrani, Kenji Khan, whose father owns a couple of condos on the island, so naturally, Sammy Gutierrez, a farm girl who, like almost everyone else, had connections. Basically, she gained access because her family's farm provides the meat for the park. And finally, Yasmina Fordola, who's the most athletic of the group, who got in because Jurassic World is one of her sponsors. After meeting with their camp counselors, Roxy, Dave, and Compsognathus, wait, that doesn't seem right. Yeah, I'm honestly not surprised these things just escape whenever they can. Anyways, the campers explore their new home for the next few... How long are they supposed to say again? Anyways, the campers enjoy the rest of the day seeing some of the dinosaur attractions, and Darius establishes himself as our dino guide, able to ID multiple species. However, later in the night, Darius attempts to sneak off to investigate what he thinks is the Compy exhibit. Kenji and Brooklyn would bust Darius, but soon help him sneak off after curfew. The 3 campers would come across an exhibit and start exploring, but Kenji would drop Brooklyn's phone in an attempt to take a picture. He then makes his way down to the outer gate to get the phone, but Darius soon realizes this isn't the copy, but much rather the Raptor Research Arena, housing the Raptor Squad. After Brooklyn presses the wrong button, Darius attempts to save Kenji, but soon everyone gets pulled out with the help of the park workers and their camp counselors. Naturally, after a stunt like that, they get scolded for it. Brooklyn gets a warning, but Darius and Kenji might be sent home early. Darius decides to take the fall, but thankfully for them, no one is sent home early, because to make up for the stunt, both Darius and Kenji will shovel dinosaur manure, while the rest of the campers visit the genetics lab where they witness the birth of an asymmetrical ankylosaur, who will be fondly known as Bumpy. Meanwhile, with Darius and Kenji tries to make it up to Darius for covering for him. So he decides to lead Darius through a network of underground service tunnels to give Darius a chance to see one of the quarantined dinosaurs, a Carnotaurus. The animal in question ended up in quarantine for being too aggressive. Back in the genetics lab, Brooklyn would sneak into Dr. Wu's office, but not before bumping into Sammy. Suspicious. Anyway, she makes her way in and discovers some secret documents. Some of these involve E750, but Brooklyn also discovers the Indominus Rex. However, Dr. Wu finds her out and kicks everyone out of the genetics lab. Back with Darius and Kenji, they manage to find the Carno's enclosure. They just happen to be on the wrong side of it. Alright, I just want to run this by you guys, but whose bright idea was to have a service tunnel exit within a dinosaur enclosure? What the hell, Maserati? What the hell? Being chased by the Carno named Toro, the two campers managed to escape. Toro, who now sports a gash on his nose due to the kerfuffle. Darius and Kenji soon return to the dino dung pile that they were supposed to be shoveling, just in time before the other campers return from the genetics lab. Anyways, all the campers will get together and share campfire stories. However, later on the same night, we see a mysterious figure giving a pretty intimidating drone one of Dr. Wu's hard drives. The drone flies off before a soon-to-be familiar roar echoes out the island. The next day, the campers get to drive some gyrospheres behind a herd of herbivores, while simultaneously the park personnel move the herd to a new grazing area. And initially, things seem to be going good, up until a storm that was supposed to be rolling up north decides to double back. And then the storm begins to frighten the herd. Soon, one of the Sinoceratops gets separated from the main herd, and all 6 campers go after it. They try to lure the lone Ceratopsian back to the main herd, but inadvertently cause a stampede. Kenji and Ben are split off from the main group. Yasmina and Sammy are stuck between a tree and a tree, while Darius and Brooklyn almost get impaled by the Sinoceratops. But they're fine. They just landed in some really soft quicksand. Seriously, what kind of park is this? How many dinosaurs died in that pit alone? Sammy and Yasmina manage to get out and head for Brooklyn and Darius to help them, but not before almost running over Ben and Kenji. All 4 of them pile in to find the last gyrosphere. As Darius and Brooklyn sink even deeper, man, remember when camp was this fun? Luckily for them, Sam manages to tame a Sinoceratops and quickly puts together some vines to make a very crude pulley. The campers manage to get the gyrosphere out of the mud pit. Roxy and Dave find the campers and return to camp. However, as Brooklyn was looking through her camera footage of the rescue, she notices Sammy doing something strange. Sammy was retrieving swabs from the dinosaur. Now we enter day 4, which is when we finally get to the main events of the first Jurassic World movie. Zach and Gray Mitchell are dropped off the Dane County Airport, where they fly to Juan Santa Maria International Airport, located in Costa Rica. And from there, they take a ferry to Isla Nublar. Once there, they are met with Zara on the dock, and make their way to their hotel rooms. Around the same time, Claire Deering, still the asset manager of the park, tries to find someone to sponsor the Indominus Rex. Back at Camp Cretaceous, Roxy, with growing concerns of the campers' safety since they've been involved in 2 life-threatening situations within the past couple of days, and with Claire hoping that her nephews will join the campers, Roxy wants Claire to provide more staff at the camp, or if the counselors should send the kids home early, despite Maserati hoping for the camp to be a success. If only Roxy can reach Claire, though. So instead of hoping to reach Claire on her phone, Roxy and Dave decide to visit the main park and speak with Claire in person. Meanwhile, the campers would have to stay in the facility for a couple of hours before the counselors come back. Meanwhile, with Zach and Gray, they make their way to the Innovation Center and meet up with Claire, their aunt. Originally, Claire was supposed to oversee the boys on the trip, but due to recent events in Jurassic World, more specifically preparing to showcase the Indominus, she's been a little busy, so she won't be able to join them. But she does provide the boys with VIP passes. Claire then makes her way to the control room, waiting on Maserati, so she can showcase the Indominus Rex to them, but not before revealing that Verizon Wireless will be sponsors for the Indominus Rex. Claire then meets up with Maserati, and they make their way to the Indominus holding enclosure. Here, Maserati discovers the enclosure is still under construction, but Claire clarifies that they had to make the walls taller to contain the hybrid, since it's growing a lot bigger than they initially thought. Claire also explains some of the traits the hybrid has, such as sensing thermal radiation, or infrared. Thanks to Dr. Wu, he spliced in pit viper DNA into the Indominus. Claire also shares that the animal started to act erratic, breaking the viewing glass, anticipating handlers that delivered its food, and wasn't there a sibling? Oh yeah, she ate it. All this in mind, Masrani is more pleased with the results, but suggests Claire to bring in Owen Grady to inspect the paddock. With some reluctance, Claire agrees. Meanwhile, in another corner of the island, we join up with Owen and his raptors. Now fully grown, they go through a training exercise with a pig. Owen manages to get more than stellar results with his raptors, which piques the interest of Hoskins and Jack Horner? Hoskins then requests a field test with the animals, but Owen and his friend Barry think it's a bad idea. Maybe because it's a bad idea. But before they can continue their conversation, the training pig from earlier escapes. One of the overseers tries to snag the piglet before he himself is snagged and set straight into the raptor pit. Owen gets in and distracts the raptors long enough for the kid to get out. Owen quickly follows suit before any of the 4 raptors can get to him. Anyways, back with Zack and Gray, they quickly ditch Zara while exploring the park grounds and attend one of the T-Rex feedings. Back with Claire, she meets up with Owen in his living quarters on the island. She asks him to check out the Indominus Rex paddock, and he accepts. Should mention the two of them have a bit of a history where they dated for a while before breaking up. Meanwhile with Zack and Gray, the boys catch the the Mosasaurus. Bit of an inside joke there. There was an article that thought the Mosasaurus was the Indominus, so during its feeding shows. While that's happening, Claire and Owen make their way to the Indominus Rex enclosure. But soon, something doesn't seem right. The animal has seemingly vanished. It's not showing up on the thermal cams, nor do they see it with the naked eye. So in a panic, Claire jumps in her Mercedes-Benz GLE Coupe, yeah, this film was sponsored, and races herself to the control room. Meanwhile, Owen and a couple of other park workers investigate the paddock. After a quick check, Larry Cruthers, one of the control room operators, tells Claire the Indominus Rex is still in the paddock according to its tracker. Before much of anyone can make sense of what's happening, the Indominus attacks, breaking out of its enclosure and killing 2 park workers. Owen manages to invade the Indominus before it moves on. Back at Camp Cretaceous, the campers just middle around while the counselors are out. The campers are not in the best of moods, mainly because of the events of the other day, and the fact that they're stuck at campgrounds with not much to do. But they might have another situation on their hands, as Brooklyn reveals her phone is missing, and points the finger at Sammy, since suspicious. The campers then get at each other's throats. Darius tries to extinguish the situation before a familiar roar forces everyone to silence. They try to see if they can spot whatever made the noise, but they can't see anything due to the canopy. So the campers leave campgrounds and make their way to the zipline tower. They do manage to see something. It's a Brachiosaurus. But just after they spot it, 2 other park workers find the kids and demand them to come down. At this point, the park staff is on high alert due to the Indominus escape. However, the kids can't hear them. Shortly after, the same Brachiosaurus they spotted is killed, and the Indominus Rex reveals itself, killing the 2 park workers, and soon sets its sight on the tower. Sammy then reveals the name of the dinosaur to the group by accident, even though she shouldn't know what it is. Suspicious. The kids get on the zip line and attempt to escape. Just before they can reach the other side, the Indominus destroys this tower, sending the kids falling to the ground, knocking everyone out. Back with Claire, she makes it to the control center as one of the control personnel, Vivian, tries to issue a park-wide alert. Masrani shuts her down, however, stating the best course of action is for ACU to capture the animal alive, and quietly, without anyone, more specifically the park guests, from knowing about the incident. Back with the campers, they awaken, surprisingly unharmed. It's revealed that Sammy indeed stole Brooklyn's phone. She was about to tell everyone, but the phone's broken from the fall, so she sneaks it back in her pocket. With the Indominus still looming nearby, the campers make haste and book it back to the camp, only to find the living quarters to be completely trashed. How did the Indominus destroy the camp despite it being almost 100 feet high, up in the trees? We don't know. Plant the phone, Sammy. Plant the phone, Sammy. Plant the phone. God damn it. With the camp in ruins and the radio not working, the campers are soon at each other's throats again, before Darius takes the lead and calms everyone down. Everyone agrees to follow Darius as they try to make their way back to the main park. Meanwhile, with the Indominus, she finds Toro's enclosure, and... well, guess Toro's dead. Unless... Back at the Raptor compound, Barry and Hoskins talk a bit. Hoskins tries to convince Barry about having the Raptors be conducted into a field test by putting on this story of himself rescuing a wolf pup and then shenanigans. But that's not important because soon they get word about the Indominus escape, and Hoskins sees this as a prime opportunity. Quick intermission with the kids at Camp Cretaceous. They soon find Toro's quarantine enclosure, or at least what's left of it. Using it as a point of reference, they soon find out where the visitor center is and make their way. While Zack and Gray have a more than awkward discussion about their parents, why Jurassic? Why? However, Gray spots the ACU team moving through the valley. Back at the control room, Owen confronts Claire about the Indominus, but soon everyone watches as the ACU team tracks down the Indominus. Owen becomes extremely concerned when he realizes the ACU team are going in with non-lethal weapons, and what he would predict comes to pass, as the Indominus reveals itself and its camouflage ability. It proceeds to kill off and injure a majority of the ACU team. With the powers at hand refusing Owen's advice to evacuate the island, he storms off, having a word with the scientists at the labs, because...
that thing out there, that's no dinosaur.
While Claire issues a Phase 1 real world, which closes every attraction north of the park and brings everyone into the lagoon area. Around the same time the slaughter is happening, Dave and Roxy wait patiently for Claire, but she doesn't show. Roxy opens up a closet. When she opens the closet, however, she finds stacks of radios, and they're all tuned into the ACU team, getting absolutely destroyed. Also, who leaves radios on in the closet like that? You're just gonna drain the battery. Unless they automatically turn on when you open the door, then fine. Also, what's a velociraptor doing there? What? Meanwhile, in Gyrosphere Valley, a couple are cruising around before running into a triceratops. Depending on what show you catch, the first dinosaur might change into a stegosaurus instead, but I digress. While the couple observe the herbivore, they are met with another dinosaur, but soon the dinosaur acts aggressive to them, and they try to flee. Soon a jeep rolls up, and out walks one of the behavioral scientists of Jurassic World, Dr. Kate Walker, and she's accompanied by Oscar, a member of the Acid Containment Unit. Not sure if this is the same Oscar we hear about in Evolution of Claire, but given his description in the book and the actor of the show, maybe. The two manage to get the dinosaur under control, and we soon learn the species is a Troodon. More on that in a bit. Also, I'm starting to think Jurassic World has a serious issue with actually containing its species. So the couple in the gyrosphere leave the area just before the rest of Acid Containment shows up surrounding the trio. Kate and Oscar leave via jeep, but not before Kate assures the Troodon, whose name is Jeannie. Acid Containment managed to get the escaped dinosaur back in its holding pen, where Kate and Oscar meet her. Along with the rest of Dr. Kate's research team, we have Dr. Martin Riley, Kate's colleague, Allison, a paleo-veterinarian intern, and Chad? Who is a computer intern now? Hold up, I swear to God I've seen this before. Anyway, the group test out an invention of Dr. Riley's design, dubbed the Dino Decoder. The purpose of the device is to monitor and read what a dinosaur might be feeling by using the animal's brainwaves, and the research was funded by Dr. Wu himself. I wonder why. Also, I should mention that, actually the scientists mentioned this, but Troodon in universe is smarter than a velociraptor. So, basically what Dr. Kate is telling us is that Jeannie is also, technically, smarter than primates. After Chad mentions the whole raptor pen kerfuffle from earlier, the Dino Decoder shows that Jeannie is very nervous. At this time, Oscar soon gets the real-world alert and realizes the Indominus has escaped. And before everyone can head out and make it to the security bunker, the Indominus breaks out into the research facility, trapping Jeannie under some rubble and forcing the staff to escape. leaving her. Back with Zack and Gray, they make it to the gyrospheres. However, just as they leave, the overseer of the ride gets to Code 19. Code 19 is what they use to notify the park staff of escaped assets, and advises the remaining guests to go back to the monorail and head back to the lagoon. Meanwhile, Masrani meets with Dr. Wu and learns more about the Indominus genetic makeup. Apparently, the animal is able to avoid the park's thermal sensors and cameras due to some of the genetic attributes that Wu unknowingly gave it. Basically, he added certain animal DNA for certain traits to be applied to the Indominus to help it survive, but unknowingly, those genetic traits also gave the Indominus a few more tricks up its sleeve. For example, Wu spliced in cuttlefish DNA so the animal can survive a faster growth rate, but that unknowingly gave it the ability to camouflage. And gray tree frog DNA was implemented to help it survive in a warm tropical environment, but that inadvertently gave it the ability to change its body temperature. Masrani, mortified by the genetic capabilities of the animal, soon gets pointed out by Wu. Basically, Wu added these genetic modifications to make the attraction, but it was Masrani that wrote off on it that allowed the creation of this, well, for a lack of a better term, monster. With this in mind, Masrani states the board will both shut down the park and Wu's division, but then Wu adds on to what Alan Grant said back in Jurassic Park 3.
You are acting like we are engaged in some kind of mad science, but we are doing what we have done from the beginning. Nothing in Jurassic World is natural. We have always filled gaps in the genome with the DNA of other animals. And if their genetic code was pure, many of them would look quite different, but you didn't ask for reality. You asked for more teeth.
Meanwhile with Claire, she calls Zara and asks her to bring Zack and Gray back. However, Zara reveals she has lost the boys. Claire then soon calls Zack on his cell phone, but the reception is terrible. Lowry then points out that there's one gyrosphere still in the valley that has yet to return to the vehicle bay. So Claire then joins up with Owen, hoping to find her nephews. Meanwhile with Zack and Gray, they enter the restricted area of the park and gain access, mainly due to one of the gates being pried open. They go in and find a small group of ankylosaurs. The Indominus then proceeds to attack the armored dinosaurs. Zack and Gray, however, being caught in the middle of the fight, will get their gyrosphere knocked over by one of the Yankees. Unable to move, all they can do is watch as the Indominus slaughters some of the ankylosaurs. Soon Zack gets another call from Claire, but the sound of his phone attracts the Indominus. The Super Predator then proceeds to destroy the gyrosphere, but Zack and Gray manage to get out. They then make a run for it, jumping off a nearby waterfall and losing the Indominus. They then proceed into the jungles on foot. Meanwhile with the campers, they continue their trek in the jungle and come across Zack and Gray's gyrosphere. And Bumpy, who's a lot bigger now, oh my god. The group then deduced they might not be able to make it to the visitor center with the Indominus still skulking around. So instead they compromise on Dr. Wu's field lab. They make their way there and in Ben's dismay leave Bumpy behind. Unless... We join back with Claire and Owen, who are in the valley looking for Zack and Gray, but they soon find a herd of apatosaurs that have been slain. They find one that's still alive, but not too long before it passes away. The pair then soon find a disturbing revelation. The Indominus didn't eat any of the sauropods it killed. Owen then deduces it's killing for sport. Meanwhile, on the coast of the island, Hoskins and his InGen team make it to the island, prepping for something while Barry spies on them from afar. He tries to reach Owen, but to no avail. Because back with Owen and Claire, they come across the destroyed gyrospheres. They find Zack and Gray's tracks up to the waterfall. Claire does the try and true Amanda strat, and Owen, like Grant, states the obvious. Owen then suggests Claire to go back to the park and have him track the kids, but Claire refuses and stays with Owen, determined to find her nephews. Back with Zack and Gray, they find another destroyed vehicle, but also find something a little more nostalgic. They manage to find the original Jurassic Park Visitor Center. They proceed inside and explore a bit before finding the garage and an old Jeep Wrangler. Zack then hatches the idea to get the car started, thanks to some past experience fixing their grandpa's Malibu. Back with the campers, they continue to the genetics lab until Darius notices Ben is missing. Oh wait, no, there he is. To the group's dismay, Ben slowed down to guide Bumpy with them. The group tries to convince Ben to ditch Bumpy, but to that I say, You monsters. But Ben is determined to have Bumpy come along. Ben then points out they can use an abandoned ACU van. They all pile in before Bumpy starts going crazy, because the Indominus Rex has found them again. Kenshi takes the wheel of the van and drives. Soon the group make it to relative safety, losing the Indominus, and make it to the genetics lab, where they find the place relatively empty. I did say relatively empty. Say hi, Eddie. Back in the control room, Maserati is confronted by Hoskins, who recommends using the Iberus Raptors to hunt down the Indominus, and Maserati considers it for a moment, but goes on to do what they should have done from the get-go. They then mount the M134 to Maserati's chopper, and they fly off to hunt down the Indominus. Back with the campers, the kids catch Eddie up and hope he'll help them. Sadly for them, Eddie might not be in the best state of mind. After a bit of foreshadowing and delusional ramblings, Darius slips the fact that the kids got here via van. Eddie then makes a break for it and drives off, but he doesn't get far before the Indominus ambushes him and eats him. The kids then make a run for it to a random cargo lot and try to avoid the Indominus. They find the van and sneak their way to it. However, it wouldn't take long for the Indominus to find the kids. After some familiar JP vibes, the kids make it to the van and punch it, leaving the Indominus behind once again. And in better news, with the radio in the van, they manage to get in contact with Dave and Roxy. However, on the ride, Brooklyn's phone slips out of Sammy's pocket, leaving the group in shock long enough for Yasmina to crash the vehicle. Speaking of vehicles, Zack and Gray continue to work on the Jeep before they finally got it to work, and they drive their way back to the main park. Claire and Owen would just miss them as they begin exploring the visitor center as well, but soon get cornered by the Indominus. They manage to escape before pinpointing the Indominus' location to Lowry, who relays it to Masrani. They find the Indominus and fire at it. Meanwhile, with the campers, Sammy reveals she's a spy, but we'll get to that in a bit, because soon the Indominus runs through the campers, getting chased by Masrani. The campers then decide to follow Maserati's chopper. However, the celebration is quickly quelled when the Indominus breaks into the aviary, setting some of the pteranodons free as they start attacking Maserati's chopper, causing it to crash into the aviary, setting even more flying reptiles free, while Owen and Claire manage to avoid them in the tree line. While the kids run to a kayak river ride, they then load themselves into kayaks, hoping the river will take them to the main park. Meanwhile, with Roxy and Dave, they try to find a way to get themselves to the kids and bring them back to the main park. They find out the kids are on the river adventure ride thanks to the GPS on the tablet. They soon say fuck it and steal a vehicle. Back with Zack and Gray, things are actually looking pretty good. If good look like the flock of pteranodons, the two soon make it to one of the park gates and are picked up by some park personnel. Zara makes her way there, with Owen and Claire joining soon, but not before the pteranodons attack Main Street. Run, Margarita guy, run! And this is just like a flurry of chaos, so let's just point out some of the major notes. Zara gets eaten, Claire and Owen find the kids, and I don't like that look that Hoskins is giving with the pteranodons attacking so many park guests. Anyway, Hoskins and the InGen Private Security Division soon take over the control room and begin preparations to use the Raptors to hunt down the Indominus. Owen, Claire, and the kids then make their way to the Raptor research arena while trying to avoid the chaos. Back with the campers as they make their way through the tunnels and encounter the Parasaur Luxes, Sammy reveals to Darius why she spied on Jurassic World. Apparently her family's farm was in danger of going under, so they had to loan money from a shady corporation called Manticore. When it came time to pay back, Manticore suggested that the Gutierrez family use Sammy to spy and obtain information from Jurassic World. However, the family declined. They didn't want to be part of it. However, for Sammy, desperate to save her family's farm, arranged everything and became the spy in Camp Cretaceous. Soon the campers get diverted from the main river route and go through a broken gate, which leads them to probably the worst place to be in a kayak in the entire island, that being the Mosasaur Lagoon itself. Meanwhile, with Dave and Roxy, they make their way to the river adventure entrance, but soon see the kids are actually at the lagoon, and they make their way there. Back with the campers, they make a break for the stands, while Yasmina goes on the shark feeder to distract the Mosasaurus. She succeeds, but is kind of stuck. Kenji then uses the feeder wire to get Yasmina across before the mosasaur attacks. Luckily, it misses and breaks the wire instead, which sends Yasmina to the stands, but not without sparing her ankle. The campers scrounge around and console each other before an alarm can be heard. The campers regroup, as the intercom states that all guests at the park should make their way to the southern tip of the island for the evacuation. If the campers don't make it within 2 hours, they will be left behind. So easy enough, right? Wrong, because it soon becomes apparent that the odds are against their favor. Even if Yasmina didn't mess her leg up, and everyone managed to run at top speed, there's no feasible way for the campers to make the docks. Also, I want to point this out, because I find it weird, but despite Camp Cretaceous releasing after Fallen Kingdom, but all the infographics, maps, and brochures use the outdated map of Jurassic World from 2015, instead of using the updated map from 2018. So, yeah, good job, guys. Thankfully for them, the still functioning monorail arrives just in time, but before they can board it, they need to pass Toro. With a rock throw, the group managed to sneak past, but the monorail comms alerts Toro to the group's presence and tries to catch them on the stairs. They manage to escape, however, with Toro surviving what should have been a pretty lethal fall. But it's alright. Finally on the monorail, the group can relax, or so they think, as Kenji, rightfully so, assumes something bad will happen. And honestly, before the Indominus broke out, I can't blame him. As the train makes its round on the lagoon, Dave and Roxy show up just in time to see the kids are safe and on the monorail. With this in mind, they make their way down to the docks, just avoiding Toro. With night descending, we go back to Owen and company. The engine security team under Hoskins' orders continue to prep themselves and the Raptor squad to go after the Indominus. Owen shows up, displeased, and glocks Hoskins in the jaw. However, Hoskins makes it very clear that the operation is going to continue no matter what, so reluctantly Owen joins. As Owen is briefing the men on how the Raptors hunt, Zack and Gray are locked in a truck with Claire for safety. And one dramatic button press later, the team is off. And yeah, this scene is awesome. The Raptors soon pick up the Indominus' scent and manage to corner it with the engine team closely behind. However, the Raptors and Indominus start doing something a little strange. They start communicating with each other. Owen then puts the last piece of this already messy puzzle of a dinosaur and figures out the Indominus is part raptor. And like that, it manages to turn the Raptor squad on both the engine security team and Owen, which I don't know about that one since Owen raised the Raptors since they were babies, but alright. The engine security team is quickly extinguished with the remaining survivors retreating, not managing to kill a single rat. Charlie, no! Back with Claire and the boys, they see the carnage through the head cams of the security tiers and the Raptors, before getting interrupted by one of the security team members, but he gets jumped by Delta. Soon Delta and Echo chase down the van, but both Claire and the kids manage to fend the Raptors off. Soon they're joined by Owen and make their way to Main Street, before Claire calls Lowry to call in the chopper for the four of them. The Raptors, still trailing behind them, soon change direction, answering to the Indominus Rex. Meanwhile, man, I said meanwhile a lot in this. Meanwhile, Dr. Wu is beginning his own evacuation of his research and researchers, making sure everything is accounted for, and strangely enough, making sure the backup generators remain online before they depart. More on that last detail later on. Wu soon gets a call from Hoskins, who sounds a bit cryptic. Take a listen.
Where have you been? Change plans. Mission took a jog to the left. I'm taking everything off site.
The embryos are safe here. They can live up to 8 weeks on the generators.
No, you listen. Pac's gonna be chapter 11 by morning. Okay, our little side project's about to get a shot in the arm. I don't want a bunch of lawyers messing around with something they don't understand. You get it? Hey, I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Gee, I wonder what they might be implying. Back with the campers, they continue on the monorail and just talk a bit. Make some toasts over some carob snacks and drinks. The hell is a carob? But soon a small explosion rocks the car a little, but it doesn't seem to be a concern. Yet. Especially since the present problem for the campers is the giant flock of pteranodons that are making their way to the monorail. The group tries to break all the lights in order to stop the pteranodons from attacking the monorail. But soon the flying reptiles become the least of their worries, as the monorail they're currently on now is on a direct collision course with another car. The kids figure they can switch tracks if they can make it to the first car, but a jammed door forces Darius to climb through the hatch on the roof. But Darius isn't the one to go. Ben volunteers and makes his way across. Luckily for them, despite all the pteranodons, Ben makes it to the first car and switches the tracks. The group congratulate Ben and everything seems to be going fine. Ben, no! Hanging by his literal fingertips, Darius can't get Ben up, and he ultimately falls to his supposed death. And this gives the campers a shock to their system. But they have to snap out of it soon, because another problem soon presents itself. By switching the tracks, the monorail is now heading in the opposite direction, so now they're heading northward instead of heading southward where the evacuation is happening. Which is kind of ironic because the park staff actually are evacuating on a dock east of the island, so if they just stay on, they might actually make it there. Oh well. But yeah, you know, we gotta stretch this series out as much as we can, am I right? Once the track enters a low point, the group soon decide to jump out. Hey, did I mention Bumpy is in here still? So the group jump, but Kenji loses Bumpy while everyone else tries to get a handle of their surroundings. Disarrayed, confused, and emotionally charged by Ben's sudden passing, the group soon get a hold of themselves thanks to Darius. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Roxy and Dave lose contact with the campers. They continue to the docks with the hopes that they'd be there, or better yet, already off the island. But that's not the case. The campers continue through the jungle, but they don't get too far due to Yasmina's injury. To shorten their travel time, and to make it easier for Yasmina to move, the group then decide to make it down to the service tunnels and try to head to the docks through there. With the evacuation in full swing, with the ports filled to the max with park guests, everyone in the control room begin evacuating as well. Lowry, however, stays behind, while Wu is evacuated with some InGen security personnel in a private chopper. Meanwhile, with Claire, Owen, Zack, and Gray, God, that's a mouthful, they make their way to Main Street and enter the visitor center, trying to meet up with Lowry, but not before checking out Wu's lab, where they find a myriad of animal hybrids. And if you look closely at the computer screen, it looks like they managed to make another dinosaur hybrid, a Stegoceratops. So quick note, there were plans to add a Stegoceratops in the film, but the filmmaker scrapped it. Not sure if this thing is still canon or not. If it is, then that would make the Indominus the third or fourth hybrid that was made. But until that is confirmed, here's an official concept drawing on what this thing was supposed to look like. Soon the group are cornered by Hoskin and his team, making way with the last set of assets that need to be extracted. And then Hoskin gives his whole villain speech and foreshadowing a certain animal later on, before getting himself cornered by Delta, and ultimately dying from her. The group tries to get to the control center, but get caught off by Delta again. They then make their way onto Main Street, where they're greeted by the remaining two raptors. Rest in peace, Charlie. But Owen manages to forge a truce or re-establish his bond with the raptors, but mainly Blue, just before the Indominus Rex shows up. Refusing its orders, the Indominus Rex then pimp slaps Blue to the wall, before the other two raptors leap at it under Owen's command. The raptors and Owen go at the Indominus, but to little effect. Gray then recommends that they need, and I quote, more teeth. Claire then grabs a flare and a walkie-talkie before leaving the hiding spot during the fight. Sadly, the last two raptors are dispatched of by the Indominus, before it turns its attention to Owen and the boys trapped in a plushie shack. And honestly, I couldn't really think of much better places to die. Claire then makes her way to a paddock door, but not any paddock door, but paddock 9. Claire then demands Lowry to open the gates via walkie-talkie. However, knowing fully well what's inside, he's hesitant of the idea before Claire bruises his ego. So reluctantly, he opens the paddock door while Claire lights up the flare. And I think a lot of people, including myself, saw this coming way before the first trailer came out when the Indominus Rex was announced. And in that theater room, I think a lot of us thought the same thing at this very moment. And in that theater room, I think we all knew what was about to go down. That it was high time for a certain apex predator to re-establish her spot at the top of the food chain. Yeah. As Owen and the boys try to avoid the Indominus, Claire runs into Main Street with the Rex in tow. After another dramatic entrance, the two Rexes then fight each other. Things are looking good before the Indominus Rex gets the upper hand, and as all hope seems lost, Blue comes in and joins the fight. Unable to focus, the Indominus is forced to take on both the Tyrannosaur and Blue. The pair of dinosaurs manage to injure the Indominus gravely, but not enough to put it down. But luckily for them, the Mosasaur manages to finish the Indominus off. The remaining Rex retreats, Blue disappears beyond Main Street, and Larry shuts down the last of the main park systems, leaving some of the backup generators operational while others are on standby. The group join Lowry and they get off the island. Wait a minute, back with the campers, they make their way through the service tunnels, but soon run into yet another problem. Because of the evacuation protocols, the park is closing down automatically, so most of the tunnels are blocked and some of the doors are getting locked. Which is not good, since now they only have 30 minutes before they can make the ferry. Meanwhile at the South Docks, Roxy and Dave make it, but can't get confirmation if the campers made it, if they're already on a ferry, or if they're still somewhere in the park. They then try to head back into the park, but are forced onto the boats. Back in the tunnels, the campers appear to be cornered by a velociraptor, but it soon reveals itself to be a compy, and it's company. Now in disarray again, the campers turn on each other, before being joined by Toro. So this wasn't mentioned in the show, but basically, before the final ferry departed, the island underwent a thermal scan. This scan was to ensure all park guests were evacuated from the island, but since the kids were in the tunnels while the scan was happening, meaning the scan didn't pick up the kids, which will have consequences later on. 4 seasons worth, that is. Soon the campers managed to avoid Toro by entering an air duct. However, they wouldn't stay hidden for long as Toro would find them. They managed to exit the ducts and land on a service track, which leads them straight to the docks. However, the exit is sealed off, and to add insult to injury, Toro also makes his way to the service tracks and is currently making his way to the campers. Even with the odds against the campers, they get in the same headspace and work as a team. They devise a plan to blow up some gas cans to hopefully scare Toro away, but the plan fails. Shocker. The campers are left scrambling to avoid Toro, but after he trips himself with a bunch of gas canisters near him, Darius throws the cattle prod and blows the absolute crap out of Toro. But Toro manages to survive the explosion and retreats, but luckily for the campers, the explosion lasted a hole in the door. They run out and make it to the docks, but only to find the docks to be completely empty. They are too late. But the campers aren't done yet, as they retreat back into the jungles of Isla Nublar. While on the mainland, Zack and Gray are reunited with their parents as Owen and Claire live together. As news of Jurassic World spreads across the world, Zia's internship at Jurassic World will be put on hold permanently. Meanwhile, on the island, the T-Rex looks out at her kingdom, marking the end of the first Jurassic World movie. Anyway, those campers. Somewhere else on the island, we catch up with Bumpy, who survived the initial jump, but he comes across something peculiar. This marks the end of Camp Cretaceous Season 1. It leads us into Season 2. Hello. Hi. Yes. This is a little awkward. So, the original idea for this video was to make it a complete timeline. Like, I wanted to do all of Jurassic World, all of Camp Cretaceous, and I wanted to get it all out before WD. However, saying that, okay, so let me explain my workflow real quick. So, I started using DaVinci Resolve mainly because it's a free application, but not only that, it's actually a really good application. And so yeah, I'm like going through the footage that I recorded, editing all together, making sure it's all nice, and making sure that I like use the best takes from those recordings, because I made a lot of mistakes. And so, for the last bit, it starts with Camp Cretaceous Season 2. I want to say Fallen Kingdom, but oh wait, no, it actually goes up to the second half of the prologue. So like that's after like Battle of Big Rock and all that. Anyway, so Da Vinci has this thing where you could delete all gaps. I did that. Now usually, when it came to the other sections, in terms of how I divided them up, you know, like Jurassic Park the game was like an hour 30 minutes in total. Same thing with The Lost World to, strangely enough, the end of The Evolution of Claire. And then I didn't check Jurassic World to the end of Camp Cretaceous Season 1 yet, but when I did that for Camp Cretaceous Season 2 to the second half of the prologue, the amount of footage there was in total was over 3 hours long. It takes me a long time to edit 18 minutes. So with that in mind, sadly I won't be able to get the entire timeline out as I wanted to. It's like, it's both a combination of, you know, the second half being like really long, but not only that, but it's like I've been distracted a lot, and that like took 5 days from me. 5 days I could have used to edit, but you know, it's what to do. So yeah, this is going to be a two-parter. Part 1 is out now. Part 2 will come out probably before the 5th season of Camp Cretaceous to, like, you know, celebrate that. And then I think after that, I'll make a supercut of the 2 parts together. Assuming that Universal doesn't nuke this video because of the amount of clips I had to use. But yeah, aside from that, part 1 now, part 2 later on. Really sorry, but yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles. But yeah, see you on... Give me a minute. Camp Cretaceous Season 5 release date. Alright, there we go. See you on July 21st, I guess.